year is 2012. A fresco titled Ecce Homo rests on a pillar in a small church in the obscure town of Borja, Spain. It was painted around 1930, directly on the wall by a minor Spanish artist, and after 82 years it had started to flake significantly from moisture buildup. Meet Cecilia Jimenez, longtime parishioner and amateur painter who is upset with the damage the painting has taken. So she decides to try and restore it herself. She gets some way through the restoration and decides to take a holiday and let it dry, then return and finish it. Sometime later, the townsfolk start to take notice of the changes. They aren't pleased. At first, the mayor suspects vandalism, but then folks eventually find out it was done by a local, Mrs. Jimenez. Eventually, a local newspaper reports on the incident, and that's when things really get rolling. The news was out, and online communities exploded. Discussion threads, criticism, memes, edits, cartoons, pastries, parodies, a bicycle, cosplays, tattoos, Japanese candy, pixel art, nail painting, stamps, SNL skits, and general hilarity spread far and wide and became an internet sensation. The new painting is mocked and ridiculed for days on end. Many people call it the worst art restoration ever, and the news travels all around the world. Let's skip forward 6 years. The location is also Spain. This 16th century sculpture of St. George has been aging badly. The wood has darkened and lots of the paint has flaked off. The local parish decides to take matters into their own hands. The result is less than adequate. One of the eyes veers off to the right. The skin is now a cartoonish pink color, and all the subtlety of the original paint job is lost. Even more upsetting is the statue is a rare example of polychrome sculpture, a complex process used to make statues more lifelike. And it gets worse. Experts say that with this amount of overpainting, removing it will also mean the detail and color of the original will be lost forever. Apparently the church hired an arts and crafts teacher to do the job. Let's skip forward 3 months. The location? Spain. Again, a set of 15th century statues was painted in garish colors by a local parishioner, with permission from the priest. Of course. I'm not a professional, she states, but I always like to do it, and the figures really needed to be painted. So, you know how to paint, right? Yeah, sure. Back to 2012. The news about the fresco continues to spread. Many comment on the painting's similarity to a monkey. People start to call it Ecce Mono. Mrs. Jimenez is interviewed by a news station where she defends herself, but without strong evidence, most of it falls on deaf ears. Now at this point, many of you may be angry at Cecilia Jimenez, and I wouldn't blame you. Some people at the time also had quite vitriolic comments about her, and many thought that this was just an arrogant old woman who had ruined a valuable painting without permission. And yeah, what she did was pretty arrogant. But according to her, she did get permission, and she also claimed that people had watched her working in broad daylight and had not said a word. And apparently, this was also not her first time working on the painting. She recounted that she spent time in an apartment by the church and had touched up the painting repeatedly, specifically on the tunic, with the permission of the parish priest and caretakers. And at some point, she decided it needed a major rework on the face, which was halted after her first stage of brushwork. Now, it would be nice to think that the only reason this looked bad was because it was stopped very early, but the proportions and muddy colors still wouldn't make much sense for a first stage. That's not to say there isn't a possibility if she was given more time there could have been a better result, because many parts do look very unfinished, but I don't think it would be able to match the original painting. And even if Mrs. Jimenez had the skills to replicate the work, that's not really the point of a proper restoration. I've watched over 30 hours of Baumgartner restoration, so I'm pretty much an expert. But according to the opinions of these other experts, restoration is only supposed to restore what has been lost, not to overpaint and add on to the artist's original vision. This is also one of the fatal flaws of the restoration of the St. George sculpture. So as soon as Mrs. Jimenez started to go past the flaky areas and eventually completely cover up the face, she should have stopped. And whether the priest actually did give permission or not, we may never truly know. However, a year later, it was revealed the priest was arrested for alleged sexual abuse and embezzlement of $285,000. The priest's lawyer said the case had nothing to do with the painting incident. You can make of that what you will. Mrs. Jimenez also had a great deal of remorse for what she did once she realized the full extent of her actions. Many reports said she suffered a great deal at the time, refusing to eat, visiting a psychiatrist, just general stress. Picture this. You're an 80-year-old woman, and your favorite local painting is deteriorating, and do you think you can restore it a bit? First, you start with small areas, but eventually you want to fix the whole image. You start painting on the flaking spots, and then you notice this spot is also flaking off, and this spot doesn't look the same, and then this color doesn't quite match, and then the paint starts getting absorbed, and before you know it, you've covered up the whole thing. So maybe you need to take a break and rethink how you're going to approach this. Then over the next 2 weeks, your restoration becomes a worldwide social media sensation. You are ridiculed and laughed at by millions of people. This is an important thing to note. You also have to understand that international backlash for anyone probably does terrible things to their mental health, especially since her mistakes were blown a bit out of proportion. As for claims that this painting was rare and valuable,
and here is what she did to this rare and valuable painting.
Sure, it was old, and the townsfolk did have a sentimental attachment to it, but several sources say it had very little historical significance and wasn't really that valuable. A lot of this can be demonstrated just by the writings about the painter of the original. Elias Garcia Martinez is pretty much only known because of the botched restoration. And it gets better. A few years later, a copy of the painting by the same artist was discovered by 2 antique dealers. It's an earlier work, and is in much better condition. So it turns out Cecilia Jimenez's mistake was actually far less significant than most people believe. What's more is that Spain had been going through an economic recession, but with help from the media, the town and the church became quite a tourist attraction. Later, the church reported nearly 200,000 visitors within the last 6 years, and $57,000 per year from merchandise and tourist fees. Later, an opera based around Jimenez's life was created. It's about as strange as you would expect. As for claims that Jimenez was full of herself, it's not far-fetched to say that she has some pride, but honestly, if you made a mistake that was so hilarious that it became famous, wouldn't you want at least some recognition and a cut of the profits? And these are profits just from tourist visitors and merch sales. She did not go around copyright claiming internet users if anyone was confused. But even from these small sources of revenue, this painting produced a lot of money. Eche Mono turned out to be great at selling merchandise. Pens, t-shirts, mugs, the usual stuff. The money was eventually split between Mrs. Jimenez and the sanctuary's retirement home. Mrs. Jimenez is reportedly using her half to take care of her son, who has cerebral palsy. Jimenez also eventually painted her own version of Jesus for a wine label. Sure, the image might be a bit wonky, but it's stylistically clear. The features are well defined, and I would say it's a big improvement. Another Eche Mono inspired wine also exists, which apparently is pretty good, and even won an award. With all the new attention, she also opened up an art show full of her other paintings that are so much better than what you would expect. Oh, and she also sold one on eBay. The painting is now permanently on display next to a picture of the original version. Some folks took their own interpretive stance on the now famous work. One reporter wrote, "The restoration provides rare, raw access to human faith at work, representing one woman's vision of her savior, uncompromised by schooling." It was unclear whether experts could ever properly restore Eche Mono, but I don't think anyone has the intention of doing so, now that the ruined version is producing more money than the original ever did. So why do botched art restorations like this happen so often? Well, I can't tell you why it seems to be happening so much in Spain, but I can tell you that art, especially old art, is extremely delicate. For a proper restoration, a restorer has to approach each and every artwork as its own problem. What chemicals need to be used, how it should be cleaned, how it should be retouched, where it should be retouched, if it should be retouched. It's quite complicated, and it requires a trained expert to do one properly without causing irreversible damage. Not only are these restorations bad, they also make getting back the original near impossible. One expert says this happens a lot more often than newspapers talk about, and when it comes to really old art, that's just how it is. Over time, it's going to pass through a lot of hands, and it's going to get damaged and accumulate grime, and eventually someone is going to try and fix it. If it's not in a museum or heavily guarded by someone with a lot of knowledge, it's going to deteriorate by natural processes or human interference. As for the 16th century statue, a re-restoration has been completed, and as far as I know, there has been no further news on the set of statues. So, what is the lesson in all of this? Well, if you ever make a mistake, just remember to make that mistake so spectacularly disastrous that you become famous for it. But in all seriousness, please do not go vandalizing art for fame. You are probably not going to get the same result. Art impacts us in ways we may not expect. In this case, it was the story of a woman who, in good faith, went in a bit over her head, became the creator of a meme, and in an unlikely turn of events managed to come out on top. Just, in the future, if you plan on doing something to an antique, please just contact an expert first.
The video game industry is abundant with contractors and freelancers looking for work. From concept art to music production to voice acting, these individuals float from project to project, rarely being tied down to one company exclusively. And unfortunately, the industry is also rife with instances where these contractors are taken advantage of, either by being denied a promised payment for their work, or getting their names scrubbed from the projects they worked on, or by simply being given horrible working conditions with unreasonable deadlines and little resources. As sad as it is, even the well-known and highly respected contractors still get this kind of treatment. And it's not exclusive to the video game industry. They are regularly screwed over in the film and television sector too. Visual effects artists on big blockbusters are crunched so badly they sleep in their offices for days at a time. Voice actors sometimes get as little as $150 for the entirety of their work on popular franchises. Sadly, another high-profile victim of this poor treatment of freelancers has now arisen, and it starts a few years back. On May 4th, 2020, Marty Stratton, the studio director of id Software, as well as the executive producer of Doom Eternal, made a post on the Doom subreddit, titled, "Doom Eternal OST Open Letter." This open letter was in response to an ongoing discussion among the community regarding the state of the game's original soundtrack, which many had deemed to be a noticeable step down in quality due to the fact that the composer for the soundtrack, Mick Gordon, who also composed the score for Doom 2016, was able to edit and mix only 12 of the 59 existing tracks, and the remainder had to be completed by the studio's own lead audio designer, Chad Mossholder. Marty's post is fairly long, but the gist of it is that he was attempting to dispel any rumors that it was id Software who was at fault by not giving Mick enough time or freedom to deliver on his end of the agreement. Marty states that he was surprised by Mick doubting they would ever work again, and that Mick had near limitless creative autonomy on the project. He asserts that Mick's failure to deliver the final product was entirely his own fault, especially considering that id even gave him a 6-week deadline extension. Marty says that as the deadline drew closer, it was Mick himself who suggested that his and Chad's work be combined into a more comprehensive release, and that Chad's work could be fleshed out more if a heavier sound was needed. Marty then says that even though Mick signed off on all this, he ended up being publicly disapproving of how the soundtrack was handled. Basically, Marty spends the entire post painting Mick as the one who was unprofessional, unreliable, and two-faced. But was it true? Unfortunately, Mick never really released a direct response, and a fair amount of people took Marty's word at face value. It was pretty easy to do because an executive going out of their way to directly speak to the fans on a fan-run forum seemed like a gesture of goodwill, especially when it directly addressed the frustration surrounding the release of the anticipated soundtrack. So a sizable chunk of the community went forward under the impression that it was Mick Gordon who burned the bridge between himself and id Software. Until November 9th, 2022, 2.5 years after Marty's post, Mick Gordon finally broke his silence. Hosted on Medium and announced through Twitter, he dropped a nuke of a reply, a very lengthy tell-all article that featured a ton of receipts, including screenshots of emails that Mick actually sent. And when I say lengthy, I mean lengthy. I can't really even bother to read it all to you word by word in this video unless I wanted the video to be an hour and a half long or more. I did a quick and dirty word count by copying and pasting the whole thing into a word processor, and apparently it's damn near 15,000 in length, about 6 times longer than Marty Stratton's open letter published on r/Doom. I do recommend reading it yourself if you have the time and patience for it, but for now, I will go over all the key points in the same order as the article presents them. Right off the bat, Mick states that id handed him a schedule that required him to score 2 levels per month, which he says is a tight deadline but not impossible. But the real problem was how quickly this schedule became disconnected with the actual development pipeline of the game. Because the game was still 2 years away from release, and little to no gameplay was finished, Mick basically had to score the game using scant information about the combat, pace, and world, and his own imagination. Mick suggested a pretty reasonable solution to these problems. Focus on a general musical identity for the game before going into specific themes, and eliminate the 2 levels per month requirement for more flexibility. Seemed pretty easy, but Marty struck it down. And Mick says he struck it down quite rudely and aggressively. Thus, Mick had to press on with guesswork, a lot of which ended up not fitting the game as it progressed in development, so more and more of his work had to be thrown out as the weeks passed. And it became clear that whoever decided on the music budget also did not understand or anticipate the actual scope of the game. Mick had to crunch more and more as the deadline drew closer, and any attempts at communicating with id ended in failure. He was left out of meetings, his emails and calls were ignored, and calls with the audio team were taken over by managers who were in a panic. But it only gets worse from there. id Software attempted to deny Mick any payment for his work as often as they could, under the notion that they just didn't like what he was making. At one point, Mick went 11 straight months without being paid for any of the work he had done in that time, beginning in January 2019. And on top of that, his crunching was so bad, he would spend days at a time at his studio, away from family, living off of microwaved food. And still, it gets worse. On June 6th, 2019, at Bethesda's E3 presentation, Doom Eternal was given its initial release date of November 22nd of that same year. And with that announcement was the reveal of a collector's edition that included a copy of Mick Gordon's original Doom Eternal soundtrack. This was a problem because he had been working only on in-game music, so this soundtrack did not yet exist and was nowhere close to even beginning to exist. And as the cherry on top, this live presentation was the first time Mick was hearing about the existence of this OST. Mick was willing to produce this OST, but needed a contract in order to do so, but Marty apparently refused to draw one up. This put Mick in a tough position because even though he wasn't in a spot to facilitate the creation of this OST, his name was already tied to it, and the public would blame him if this OST was never released. Time pressed on, and Mick continued to work in spite of being ignored and exhausted. He says he contemplated quitting, but found himself believing that he would lose more by quitting now than he would gain if he finished the project. The game was inevitably delayed to March 2020, and while this might have seemed like a potential blessing for Mick, it only led him to being strung along even more. He had finally become fed up enough to threaten to leave the project after 10 months of no pay, but had to play ball because he couldn't afford a legal battle against ZeniMax. Finally, he received his pay at the end of November 2019, which meant his contract had been fulfilled and his role in the project had ended. The in-game music was finished, but of course this was after 2 straight years of rigid schedules, constant crunching, producing guesswork that got thrown out, and little to no communication from id. In spite of everything, Mick held fast and stayed with the project until the end, and the game would launch to critical acclaim and financial success. However, the problems still didn't go away. Mick soon noticed that all of the music he produced during the project, nearly 5 hours worth, was being used in the game, but he was only paid for half of it. This was a tough spot because placement of that music within the game was the job of the lead audio designer, Chad. And once Mick sends the files over, it was the audio team's job to decide what they would do with them. This extra 2.5 hours of music contained rejected tracks, mock-ups, and demos that Mick was under the impression would end up not being used, but were eventually put in the game and in marketing material anyway, and id Software did not pay him for it. Mick wanted to begin work on the OST, but Marty continued to ignore his requests for a new contract to be written up, forcing him to skip over id entirely and talk to Bethesda instead. This opened up another can of worms because apparently Mick was still owed money from a totally separate OST he made for Bethesda back in 2015, which I assume is Wolfenstein. And Bethesda used this fact to their advantage in this new contract for Doom Eternal's OST by saying that payment for that other OST would be consolidated into this new contract. So now, Mick had to go along with it in order to get his rightfully owed pay for 2 OSTs. So negotiations for the Doom Eternal OST began, and Mick proposed 30 tracks totaling at over 2 hours in length, comparable to Doom 2016's OST. This was shot down immediately because it was clear there wasn't enough time or money to cover a project of that size. But Marty claimed in the open letter that this suggestion was agreed upon, wording it in a way that made him seem generous by allowing Mick an extension. That was a total lie. Thus, Bethesda wrote up a draft for the contract. It stated that Mick had to produce 12 tracks for the OST, that id Software had final approval for the track list, that the contract would include payment for the 2015 OST he was owed money for, and that the deadline for Doom Eternal's OST was April 16th, but was flexible if need be. This seems all well and good until March 11th came around and a delay for the OST was announced, because Mick still had not received the final draft for this contract. Work for the OST began, but suddenly Marty sent a frantic email stating that the April 16th deadline was now a necessity, because consumer protection laws in certain territories meant consumers who pre-ordered the collector's edition were entitled to a full refund if the OST was not out by April 20th. Mick realized this was a threat and that he would be held legally liable if the OST was late. He says that if he knew of these consumer protection laws, he would never have agreed to do the OST at all. But Marty had a backup plan, and it did not involve Mick. Marty said that he already had the lead audio designer, Chad, make a quick and dirty alternative OST by cutting and editing together snippets of the in-game score. And creation of this alternative OST began 6 months prior, meaning that Marty was secretly working against Mick the entire time. Marty claimed in his open letter that bringing in Chad was a last-minute decision, basically as a safety net. But the very metadata within the files that Chad sent Mick suggest that creation of this other OST began all the way back in August 2019. The deadline was close, and Mick had to face reality. It was no longer feasible to create a good product anymore, because Chad's slapdash edits were not OST quality, and it was obvious fans would notice. Now, Mick had to focus on preparing for potential repercussions. Mick focused on fulfilling his contract, 12 tracks for the remaining 8 days. Again, he crunched 18 to 20-hour days and slept beneath his desk at the studio. With literally a few hours remaining, Mick sends 10 songs over, and Marty interfered, suddenly explaining that he did not want these 10 songs, but different ones instead. He had been uncooperative and absent this entire time, and now, at the last moment, he wants to give direction. Marty vetoed Mick's OST and said they would go with Chad's version. Mick couldn't do anything about it as he's merely a contractor. Mick confirmed with id that he had met his contractual obligations, and probably the only silver lining in this tale finally happens. He was paid the full contract amount plus an on-time bonus without dispute. Mick was never allowed to listen to the OST before it was released, but when it was, he eventually had the time, and lo and behold, it was awful. It was full of shoddy edits, poor synchronization, technical mistakes, timing errors, the works. To say that it was a quick and dirty hack job would be kind. What was extra frustrating to Mick was seeing Chad being credited alongside him as co-artist. Chad played no part in actually creating any of this music, yet was given the same level of importance as Mick anyway. A particularly bad example is track 59, Final Sin, Sandy City. Mick says that this was a demo file rejected by Chad himself, yet placed in the OST with Chad's name right next to it. The OST released to harsh reactions from fans, and Mick, despite being screwed over, still felt guilty over its quality. And Marty, in an act of confounding narcissism, emailed Mick to ask why he wasn't giving public support for the OST. Marty insisted he wanted a positive outcome for all involved, but the following Skype call between them had him on a warpath. Marty was jumping to the conclusion that Mick's firmness on this matter was some sort of attack. Mick pointed out that the OST was announced without his involvement and that he was not told of the looming consumer protection laws until 13 days before the OST was supposed to launch. Marty defended his decision to ignore Mick and keep him in the dark by saying this was some sort of comeuppance for Mick not falling in line, and that as soon as people come after us, we come after you. A pretty brazen threat if there ever was one. This call ended up being an hour of Marty raging and chastising Mick for things the latter had no control over. But it ended with one agreement: that both men would make a joint statement together in order to control the growing inferno of fan frustration. Marty asked Mick to not say anything publicly until the time was right, and Mick complied. However, in an ugly, deceptive, two-faced move, Marty instead went on the Doom subreddit to post that open letter and dump all the blame onto Mick's lap without so much as a heads up. Mick states that the open letter was stuffed to the brim with lies, and that Marty knew enough about Reddit and how the site worked to know that this open letter would be seen by many, many people in a short amount of time. Mick decided that enough was enough, and he finally brought in lawyers who contacted ZeniMax directly. ZeniMax tried to defend themselves, but Mick countered by plainly stating that Marty's allegations were in fact in direct contradiction with the contract Mick legally completed, and that id Software breached that contract by using twice as much music as they paid for. ZeniMax quickly buckled and tried to settle, but the settlement was insulting to say the least. ZeniMax supposedly proposed a deal where they would pay what they owe, and in return, Mick makes a new, polished version of the Doom Eternal OST. Basically, ZeniMax acted as if they were generous for offering to pay for music they essentially stole, and having Mick work for them even longer on a project he should have had total control over at the very start. A shocking, disgusting lack of accountability here. Then another settlement was made, in which Mick would receive a six-figure sum, and in exchange, Marty would never have to delete his open letter loaded with lies, and Mick would never be allowed to talk about the OST situation or publicly criticize any ZeniMax product. For life. Basically, ZeniMax was offering a wad of cash for Mick to take all the blame and reputation damage until his dying day. Again, insulting. Mick was already seeing harassment from fans online who were successfully misled by Marty's open letter, and he decided to offer a final settlement. That ZeniMax pay him for the extra music used in Doom Eternal. Marty takes down the open letter, and in exchange, Mick will produce a better OST. It was the most reasonable and fair counteroffer Mick could have made. In fact, it was probably too nice. Anyone with slightly more spite in them would have rather died than offer more work. But this reasonable offer was met with stalling, and the wait for a response dragged on. Then Mick decided to take the open letter situation into his own hands by personally contacting one of the moderators of the subreddit, who thankfully complied with Mick's request to remove the post. But 12 hours later, the post was back up. The mod blocked Mick, and Mick was given a prompt message from Marty's lawyers that Marty was greatly offended by the removal and that now an amicable resolution was impossible. Again, Marty displays no desire to respond to Mick unless it's an opportunity to make Mick look worse. Marty tries to paint Mick as the one who burned the bridge that could have led to a positive outcome, but we all know now that that bridge never existed to begin with. This put Mick in the position he is in now, making a public response, because it's really the only way to get any semblance of closure that doesn't result in him getting screwed over more. He iterates that he generally loves his career and the relationships he's formed and work he's created throughout, and that he never quit Doom. He only quit a toxic client. This is definitely apparent in his consistent willingness to go back and fix the Doom Eternal OST, even after all of this stuff has happened. The next section of Mick's statement is a direct rebuttal of Marty's open letter bit by bit. It re-emphasizes stuff we've already went over in the main body of the article, but the specific points raised against Marty's words are: 1. Doom Eternal's OST was poorly managed from the outset, with Mick not even being contracted for it when it was announced. 2. The OST was delayed before Mick was under contract, and thus Mick is not to blame for any delays because he technically wasn't yet hired to make it. 3. The deadline for the OST was not in January like Marty states, but rather in March, and Mick was only contracted for 12 songs, not 30 songs, which was Mick's suggestion but was ultimately refused. 4. Mick was paid for fulfilling his contract, so accusations of unprofessionalism on his part would make little sense because it would have been grounds for id, Bethesda, and ZeniMax to refuse payment. 5. id Software was already working on an alternative OST for months before Mick was contracted, meaning Marty's claims that Chad was brought on at the last minute are false. 6. Marty doesn't seem to understand the mastering process as he blames the OST's poor quality on Mick instead of Chad, even though id themselves approved all of Mick's in-game scores. 7. The problems with the OST's quality were obvious immediately because Mick was receiving questions about it the moment it released, so him clarifying that he did little work on it was not some sort of war declaration on id like Marty pretends it is. 8. Mick stated that he would probably never work with id again because, well, Marty treated him like shit the entire time, which makes Marty pretending to be blindsided by that comment pretty disgusting. Furthermore, Mick adds that he dislikes Chad being credited as an artist not only because he didn't make any of the music, but because id also refused to let Mick credit his own longtime collaborators who actually did contribute to the score. Plus, to this day, Mick has never personally received any award given to Doom Eternal's score. He's only ever seen them behind a glass case from a distance, and Marty himself was enough of a douchebag to collect some of those awards himself. And 9. Mick says the most hurtful lie Marty made was the suggestion that Mick's alleged unprofessionalism led to the harassment of an id employee, even though Chad was brought in by Marty himself without Mick's knowledge, and Marty highlighted Chad's involvement himself in the open letter. And that pretty much concludes Mick's statement. There's still some smaller details I didn't go into for the sake of brevity, but I suggest you read the whole thing yourself if you have the time and patience for it. If I read through the whole thing word for word, then this video would probably end up being an hour or so long, which would defeat the purpose of it being a more digestible summary. The situation surrounding the Doom Eternal OST is an extremely complicated one that dates back years. And even though it took 2.5 years, Mick Gordon finally gave the full story, and it is damning. It shows that not only was he actually not to blame for the album's poor quality, but the person who first pointed the finger at him publicly, Marty Stratton, is the one responsible not only for the dismal condition of the final product, but also for the heinous mistreatment of Mick himself for pretty much the entire time he was working on the game. Mick was brought on for in-game music without any finished levels to draw inspiration from, requiring a ton of guesswork that was thrown out. He was announced to be making an original soundtrack that he wasn't contracted for yet. He was ignored every single time he tried to communicate with id management. He was forced to crunch 18 to 20 hour days constantly to meet ridiculous deadlines and had to sleep in his studio for days at a time and live off microwaved food. He went as long as 11 straight months without being paid for any of the work he did in that time. He went unpaid for an extra 2.5 hours worth of music that was used in the game and marketing material, even though he was contracted for half of that. He was being secretly ousted as the OST producer by Marty bringing in Chad without any notification. He was straight up libeled by Marty in the open letter on Reddit, and every attempt at a settlement was met with a demeaning counteroffer that didn't have any closure to the ordeal. Mick did not take a 6-figure sum to keep his mouth shut. He decided to come forward with the truth. After reading everything, it's almost impossible to truly grasp how insanely mistreated Mick was for months on end. It's incredible he waited a whole 2.5 years to make a response. Anyone with less patience would have probably tried to make this statement immediately, but I imagine Mick wrote this with the help of legal counsel. This entire story is a freelancer's worst fucking nightmare. Every conceivably realistic worry a music contractor would have about a project came to life during Mick Gordon's time working on Doom Eternal. It's beyond the pale. The horrible planning, the malicious silent treatment, the terrible crunching,
Light Matter have just released a new kind of computer, one that's based on light. And this is a big deal for the entire industry. Let me explain why. Today, computing demand is growing faster than silicon chips can keep up with. To get more performance, chip makers nowadays just throw in more silicon at the problem. Double the area, double the RAM, double the cost. And it's been working, for now. But there is a catch, because the rule of the game in semiconductors is that you pay per area, per silicon area used, and the costs nowadays are skyrocketing. Nowadays, a single GPU costs way more than your rent. One thing is clear, we can't double down on silicon. We have to rethink how we compute. Well, if we think about it at the data center scale, it comes down to 3 main aspects. First of all, compute, interconnect, and memory. Let's start with compute. For the past decade, the main engine
One, the second domino has fallen in the race to raise prices across the board in the industry. I don't normally stream on Thursdays. I have like an eye doctor appointment in like 30 minutes, but I figured I would talk about this because it's such a big deal. We just have to talk about it. I mean, it's very urgent and significant. So what has happened, in case you missed it? Well, Xbox, Microsoft, I guess, as well, they have confirmed that they're raising the prices of pretty much everything, not just now, but through the holiday season. So they've raised the price of the Series S from $300 to $380, the Series S 1 terabyte version to $430 from $350. The Series X digital is now $550, up $100 from the original price of $450. The base Series X is up $100 to $600. The Series X 2 terabyte version is at $730. And you can see some of these other things, like the wireless controller is up $10. The Elite Series 2 Core is up $10. The Elite Series 2 full whatever variant is up $20. The headset is up $10. And they've also confirmed that they're going to be raising the premium AAA games that they have to $80 as well. So they're big flagship games, like I'm guessing Call of Duty, I'm guessing eventually games like Fable, Gears, all of those are going to be hitting $80 starting this holiday season. And just everything across the board is seeing price hikes. And this was kind of surprising to a lot of people, myself included, but also like not that shocking when you think about it a little bit more, because Microsoft just had an earnings call, a very good earnings call, an earnings call that went so well. You see this massive skyrocketing of their stock price. Yeah, that's because they dropped their earnings call that was so positive that everybody was wildly impressed. It raised the price not just of their stock in the market, but also of a bunch of other sort of satellite companies that work with Microsoft. Also saw like 3, 4, 5% skyrocketings in their stock price just because of how good these earnings were. Even in certain sectors that have been stagnating, like gaming, where growth has been pretty much non-existent for the last 18 months to 2 years, they still saw 5%, 6% year-over-year growth, which is wildly impressive, especially because a lot of people and a lot of other companies have been really struggling. And it's apparently because of Game Pass growth, Call of Duty doing well, and Minecraft also specifically doing quite well, is what they said in the earnings call, crediting the success of the Xbox business right now, which is just funny that, you know, something like Minecraft, all these years after its initial launch, can still be doing huge heavy lifting for a massive company like Xbox within Microsoft, which is a giga company. But a lot of people were really frustrated by this, naturally, because Microsoft is a $3.2 trillion firm, okay? That T stands for trillion, okay? The market cap, that's just if you multiply the total outstanding number of shares by this price point, okay? If you multiply that, that gives you the value of the company as it's appraised by the market, and that puts it at $3.21 trillion. And people are like, you're worth $3.21 trillion. Why are you raising the prices on all of these like little gaming peripherals on the consoles? Why are you doing this? Don't you have enough money? But here's the thing, and we've said this on stream 1,000 times. The reason they're worth $3.2 trillion is because they do stuff like this. If they didn't raise prices like this, they wouldn't be worth $3.2 trillion, okay? They'd be worth a good bit less, okay? There's a reason why there's the stereotype of like soulless corporate sociopathic board of directors. Like there's a reason why that stereotype holds true, and it's because if you want to be the most successful business you can, you have to just like no generosity, okay? No throwing gamers a bone because you had a good year. That's not a thing if you're talking about these giga corporations, okay? It's just not. But I mean, I think now the elephant in the room for most people is that this pretty much prices, I would assume, the average consumer out of an Xbox. I don't know why you would be going to the store and then see a $600 Series X next to like a $500, $550 PlayStation 5 and go with the Xbox. I just don't think it makes sense. I mean, even Synth Potato here on Twitter said, there's literally not a single reason anyone would buy a Series X for $600. Why is this console more expensive than the PS5 when it's not as powerful and has been underselling for years? Never seen a console that's underperforming raise its price in response. That assumes that PlayStation stays where it is. And I would bet you 3 or 4 live service games that PlayStation is going to be raising their prices across the board. within a few weeks. I mean, I would be shocked if they didn't. Almost certainly they will. I mean, this is happening for very, very broad reasons that affect everybody. Things like tariffs. Shocker, when you put like 145% tariff or even reduced tariffs of like 20% or 40% on electronics goods that are coming out of China, where all of these consoles are manufactured, that raises the cost to produce and import them into a market like the US, which is a massive market for these consoles. And as a result, it reduces the profitability, it reduces the margin. And so in order to balance that out, you have to raise the margins everywhere else to make up for it. So you see companies like Xbox raising the prices across the board globally to help make up for the lower margins that you'll see in markets like the US. This is a very normal thing that happens all the time, where like you might take a little bit more from the Europeans or from the Australians if it means you can make up for some losses in like a Japanese market or the US markets and things. It's pretty standard. So tariffs are certainly an element of this, but the other thing is just inflation. I mean, inflation's been crazy. These companies, their margins have been shrinking, even though the hardware has stayed the same, even though their businesses have been fine. Inflation just making the dollar worth less means that you just kind of have to figure out other ways of increasing the price point that you're getting and increase the money that's flowing in. And they're doing that by just raising the prices across the board. So right now in this moment, I agree, Synth Potato, I agree that it doesn't really make sense to pay $600 for a Series X in comparison to what you see like with the lineup on PlayStation, unless you factor in other things like the value of Game Pass, saving money on these full price copies. Because now Xbox games on PlayStation, the premium ones will be $80. You want to buy Call of Duty on PS5? It's going to be $80. I almost guarantee you. You want to buy, Gears when it comes to PlayStation. You want to buy Starfield when it launches on PlayStation. It's probably $80 as well. So it's not a super simple equation. Sure, there is still an argument, I guess, to be made for Xbox hardware, but it definitely becomes a much harder argument to win now that the prices are so much higher. But it's only a matter of time before PlayStation follows suit. Let's be real for just 10 seconds. PlayStation has already raised the prices of their consoles this generation. They've raised prices of peripherals. They've raised prices on many, many different things. And so it's only a matter of time before they follow. And I don't know exactly how they'll do it. They might do like a showcase late May, which is sort of being rumored. It might slip into early June, but it's being rumored for late May, in which case they probably do a gameplay deep dive on Ghosts of Yotei. They probably show that rumored God of War spin-off game that's like a backstory for Kratos, exploring his relationship with his father and all of that stuff. They probably reveal all of that stuff and then confirm Ghost of Yotei. Like, I think they've already said it's going to be at 70, but then probably also mention that, oh, the PS5 is going to go up $50 or $100 here and there. And they're just going to slowly walk you up the pricing ladder. And that's how it's going to happen. I mean, let's just be perfectly honest. And the other piece of this too, shocker, I mean, mark it off your bingo card for this video, because we went a whole video almost now talking about it, but GTA 6, it's the elephant that's not in the room yet. And if you have your console as an option to play GTA 6, you would much rather have it with a wider margin before GTA 6 comes out than a smaller margin, because these like consoles are going to start to sell out, I would guess, in the weeks leading up to GTA 6, because there's a lot of people who have not moved into the current gen, but GTA 6 will be the game that pushes them into it. And if the PS5 is sold out, people will buy a Series X just to play Grand Theft Auto 6. If they're upgrading from Xbox One or PS4, they'll just buy the Series X. And so if they can get the margin wider by increasing the price by $100, they're going to do it. Which is why I think you'll see PlayStation also raising the price before GTA 6, before the fall. They might not raise it until later in the summer when the news is kind of quiet. They might sit on it all the way till like July when basically no news comes out. So it just kind of like bloop, and they can just raise prices quietly. But time will tell. This is just the reality of the industry now, is that all the prices are skyrocketing. People point back to the good old days of the PS4 era when these games were getting price cuts, or rather the consoles and accessories were getting price cuts, where the PS4 launches at like whatever it was, 400 or 450, I forget exactly where it was. But then it gets cut down with a slim variant to $299, and all of a sudden it's a way better value. And then they announce the Pro at the original price of the starter console. Those days are just gone. they're just gone. And, you know, we can miss them, we can appreciate them for what they were, but it's just not, that's just not how it is anymore, unfortunately. But again, it's the hardcore gamers are not the ones that are really going to be affected by this. Hardcore gamers probably already have a Series X. They probably already have a Series S. They probably already have, you know, for when PlayStation eventually raises their price, they probably already have a PlayStation if they want it. Hardcore gamers will not be that affected. Raising the price to like by $10, $20, that's not that jarring if you spend a lot of money on games. Who this affects are the more casual crowd, the people who are not viewing gaming as their primary hobby, the people who maybe are in high school or college and don't have a lot of cash. Those people are the ones that are going to be seriously affected by this. And that's where it's just really, really unfortunate. You know, there are programs like Game Pass that can make this more approachable to give your dollar a better value, which is certainly the case. You know, Xbox has been doing very, very well recently, even having Clair Obscur Expedition 33 on Game Pass and the Oblivion remaster on Game Pass included. Like, just those two releases should fill up your calendar for a month or two at the very least. But it's just really unfortunate to see the industry going this route. But the moment one big, you know, corporation decides to do it with their platform, all the others will follow, because then they don't have to absorb all the blame for it. And so it's just a matter of time before you see PlayStation doing it as well. But, you know, time will tell exactly when that happens. But this is the new norm, fam. $600 base consoles, as you can see, Series X, $600, up from $500. They're walking very close. They're walking that ladder. And Tyro, I would not be shocked at all if the next generation base consoles are starting at like $800-900. They might even slip up towards 1,000, and then they have like a budget variant that's like 600 or 700. I'd be very surprised if the next gen of like Xboxes and PlayStations launch anywhere close to $500. I think those days are behind us. And frankly, because they're doing this at this point in the generation, 2025, it's still rumored the PlayStation 6 probably comes like late 2027. Xbox's next gen console might be coming late 2026 even. But because they're doing it now, the whole goal is to normalize it, get you used to the price hike now, so that when they launch the next gen of consoles, it's not as jarring. Whereas if they went straight from like 2020 prices to what they're going to do for next gen, it would be super jarring. But they're just going to, again, try to slowly walk you up the ladder, because that's how they do these things. But crazy day, especially after wildly successful earnings, to see like the company riding high and then come and, you know, raise the prices on everything. There's a reason why they didn't raise the prices back, you know, yesterday. There's a reason they're doing it today while they're riding high here, because, you know, they're riding high with investors. Investors' confidence is high. They would have, if they did this, you know, yesterday, this would have signaled to investors that they were anxious about margins. They were worried about it. But because they do it today, it's just business as usual. You know, everything comes down to timing in the corporate world, and this was no accident for sure. So let me know what you think of all of this. I can't say I'm surprised. I'm surprised at how aggressive the hikes are. I think we all were braced for price hikes. Seeing them confirm that they're going to go to 80 with AAA games, like, that also is not that surprising. For games like Call of Duty, I mean, those games just print money, so that's not really a surprise. But nonetheless, it's jarring at the very least. So I don't know. Let me know what you think of all this. Comment section below. I'll be interested in checking them out. I'll be back on stream tomorrow, rocking and rolling. Can't wait to see you then. Much love, my friends. I'll see you soon. He took my thing. Red flag, red
disturbed Karen loses her mind when banned from Hobby Lobby.
On February 20th, 2024, officers responded to a Hobby Lobby for a call of a disorderly customer.
Not a big Hobby Lobby fan, I'll be honest with you. Why are we going through the void here?
Hi.
What's going on?
I have the rights to complain and have also the dump name of the manager and direct breach of privacy in full cyber security. They're directly of customers' breach of privacy, and they having consumer rights of breach of privacy and did not need to have
So stalking?
exploitation.
Hobby
of
Lobby
consumers.
stalking her?
Like I am a healthcare professional and U.S. Army cyber harassment
So you're saying
syndicate.
Hobby Lobby's cyber stalking you?
Cyber stalking and full security, yes, they are consumers' rights of privacy.
And you think
I'm
it's
helping.
this Hobby Lobby?
You can check into those. One thing is you can check if there was nothing, then you could even.
So it's Hobby Lobby is cyber stalking her. Why would they do that? Seems like they just they talk it out and she goes home. Cool. I like that idea that Hobby Lobby would cyber stalk a customer. Like just shit posting on their Twitter about it. Search the ADHD and Supernatural. Oh yeah.
Witnessed myself from like a third person point of view.
Ego death.
Walking over to my teacher.
Oh.
Exposing myself. Which is different from...
That's not ego death.
So that a half an hour would not be out of the norm for you to be exposed that long and not realize it when you're walking around with your sweatpants basically choking your penis while you're walking around. You see how it's not making a lot of sense?
But I do promise that it was an accident. But I don't exactly have like the biggest, if I can say.
What is happening? What? What is this? This is sad. What is the story here?
So I was in class, or not in class, I was in Williams Hall studying for an exam.
How did this go on for 36 minutes? It seems like it's kind of kaput right there in the first minute.
Was this guy, when I sat down, he was like kind of looking at me, but I just was like, whatever.
Sir, let me see your penis. Let me see if it matches the description.
Can step in there real quick. Just so we're not...
Officer Jacobs, I'm doing a peen inspection in there. Cover me.
I have ADHD, so my mind wanders a lot.
Okay.
I know it's happened a lot at home.
Okay.
In which I'll like go to the bathroom and then...
I like that idea. Listen, I'm a little scatterbrained sometimes. I'll often take a piss and I forget my meat's out. Like, I mean, ADHD, am I right?
They said someone matching your description.
What day would this have been?
I could not tell you.
The day is pretty important. I usually only whip my cock out on like Thursdays or Fridays, so it's, I don't know, it probably wasn't me, but ADHD, I sometimes lose track of like the days and stuff, and then Wiener comes out on like a Monday, had a schedule.
So...
God, it looks like right now he's about to unleash like a jutsu. Like he's got that like Reddit mod look to him, and it really looks like he's about to just fucking shoot like a fireball like Sasuke or something.
If there was another report that could have possibly been, if this is happening, then I truly am sorry.
If this is happening,
There's not some other reason why you might be doing this on, you know,
the Phantom Winky
purpose
exposure.
or anything like that, or I mean, it's
I don't really have any sexual desires toward anyone, really.
okay.
So I would have no reason to go around
Checkmate.
bashing people.
Okay.
Well, we're good here. I mean, that checks out. We're fine.
I really...
Just pay a little more attention.
Back in high school, about 4
That
years
is what we just saw on the Sizzler reel.
incident.
Okay.
It was slightly different. At that time, we still don't really know what happened.
We're still investigating.
Out of body experience, but that's not what's
Had a close encounter of the third kind. The aliens pulled my whole fucking schlong out.
Okay.
Study hall was traumatized.
That is an issue. We did a bunch of brain scans and whatnot, and nothing was abnormal. So.
Okay.
Why would? I'm very curious. Why would that have been the next steps there? So he unleashes the hog, and they're like, we got to get to the bottom of this. We got to see what ghost in this man's head was pulling the levers there that forced him to do such a thing. Put him in the MRI just to check for like the Wiener Master or something.
It's going all right. Doing really well in Japanese. I actually applied for a study abroad program.
Oh, cool.
Oh my. Oh my.
That would be another reason why we should do something to contain that.
Jeopardize that. You a commuter student?
Yes, sir.
Thought it sounded like. Okay. We're gonna have to sort some things out. I got another officer talking to the young lady who made the report, so.
He didn't like pull them down. It was just like kind of between the sweatshirt and like top of the pants.
Okay. You think he like intentionally?
Oh, he upper decked it.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Because the way that like he was looking at me when I first sat down, I thought was like a little weird, dude. Really, he was just like, what?
The top turnbuckle. Yeah. I thought he did like a whole like dropping trow.
Like what was happening, or well, they found him out at Williams, so the police are with him now. So I just came out to talk to you and.
Do you want to see him?
Figure out what was going on.
You want to go say hi?
Yeah, like I said, of course he never admitted to anything, but it definitely felt intentional.
Yeah.
Seems like a hard thing to be on accident.
I called my mom.
Called your mom about it?
Yeah.
Okay. Rather
Looks like, judging by how I don't feel like watching all 35 minutes of this conversation with this guy, but it looks like they do end up pressing charges for the public indecency. That scare you? Well, you scare me with your lack of hygiene. It's time to fix that. Get some Cheeky soap. Use Cheeky.com. We've made the perfect soap. Didn't we see that one video? The Florida man offering a cop a drink in the middle of a car chase. Didn't we see that one? That sounds so familiar. Officers can't keep a straight face with this entitled woman. That sounds really familiar. No, never mind. That title sounds so familiar, but I do not recognize that thumbnail. She's dressed like she's going to Gasparilla, which is like the pirate invasion festival Tampa does every year. Is this Tampa?
Out of the store because I'm white. It's a black person's word over a white person's word.
I don't have to explain anything to you, so put your stuff back.
You're illegal.
This guy is not having it. I'm so used to body cams over the last week where the officers like entertain like the weirdos. This guy's like, no, absolutely not. Fucking grabs it like a toddler's toy, and immediately she's like, okay, it's serious.
So the call that we got was you were in here.
She's actually a potion seller.
Cursing people out.
I didn't curse.
Perhaps, yeah, brewing concoctions.
Can you put that on the video so I can see it?
I don't know. You're gonna have to ask them.
I need concrete evidence, and I'd like to talk to my lawyer, please. The privacy is, if you have not committed a crime, you don't need to give any officer. You are the same level as me if I haven't committed a crime.
She outranks you. Get out of there, officer. She's too powerful.
Not curse. Can I see it on video? Can I please see some concrete evidence? Excuse me, but what crime have I committed to warrant you guys coming in here like a army to shoot me or something? I'd like to know in legal language what crime I have committed. So I need a video camera to see what I have done.
Man, she is really good at this.
Concrete evidence on a video camera to see what I've done. You're choosing their word over my word, so I need it on a video camera to look at. So who's the supervisor?
He's on his way here now.
Is he a police?
Yes,
He is.
Okay, well, all I'm asking
He wrote the Privacy Act.
language, tell me the legal thing I have.
You're meeting the Oracle.
Okay, let me explain to you, ma'am. I've just explained it to you.
Because you are obstructing the Constitution of the United States.
This is what it sounds like to talk to somebody on Twitter. 100%. I know she is glued to that platform. She is probably there day in, day out in the fucking trenches. She is literally Twitter speaking. So is this, they just keep arguing with this woman. They just, oh man.
You're not
yeah.
your name.
I haven't. First of all, you've got to provide me with the thing I've done wrong in legal terms. I need to see the video of that disorderly conduct.
But why? But why? I need to confirm whether or not this is a real crime, Only I can determine this. I must see it. Please put it up on the Jumbotron, please, so I can analyze this evidence.
Can I have the name of
the management?
Oh, can I have his name, please?
You're gonna get.
She's trying to settle the court case in this store.
I want the name of the manager who's banning me so I can take it to my attorney.
She provides her ID.
No, I will not. I will.
He looks so fed up. He looks so annoyed.
No, I am not. A racist is somebody that kicks somebody out of a store for no reason, for just being white. I relate better to people of my own race. I relate better. They always hit me, push me,
what the
push me around, cheat me, lie to me, steal my money when I do stuff. I want to talk to someone that I relate to. Like what?
It is that is 100% a Twitter addict. 100%.
You're accusing me of something. I want you to see what you're accusing me of.
It's crazy people like this exist. It's so good. Does this go on the... Yeah, it looks like this is the whole thing. I don't feel like listening to... Well, they actually do eventually get her out. I thought it was going to go the whole 20 minutes. They bring her outside and just keep talking to her. What an insightful conversation that must have been. You're missing the best legal advice you'd ever hear. I just can't keep listening. It's just such a yap fest. You see the EWU body cam video, how to catch 9 felony charges in 1 minute. Guy sounds like a cartoon character. Isn't that the one I just watched? I don't remember that being the name of it though. Is this Hank? They got Hank Schrader in here? What happened? What went so wrong? They're minerals, Marie. Oh man, wait, and a chase and everything? Oh boy, he was racking them up. Trust me, pup, that is not a fight you win. Oh my god, it's going after the police canine. Uh-oh. Wow, this thing seems like it pops off. What a crazy sizzler reel.
When officers in Stewart, Florida receive reports of
hey, we know how to do it big.
Unconscious man behind the wheel of a truck in the middle of a residential street, they immediately respond for a welfare check.
Is this one even safe to watch on stream? This one sounds like super serious. This one goes ballistic. It's fine. I'm just gonna double check. I'm gonna look it up real quick. Surprisingly, it did not come up when I typed this one in right away. There's too many other people that also caught 9 felony charges in a minute in Florida. I scrubbed through. The dog doesn't get hurt. That's all I needed to hear then.
God, if you missed them a pedicure.
Dispatchers in Martin County receive a concerning call
in December,
on their non-emergency line.
That's Christmas time.
In a pickup truck with a trailer hooked up to it. It's like he's like sleeping, but the truck is on. Like I said, I knocked on the door.
He's meditating.
I knocked, I yelled. He didn't respond.
It's called astral projection.
Or in the truck, excuse me.
I got lost in the sun. We're on some friends.
You need some friends?
Yeah, well.
Where do they live?
Pump City.
He sounds like the guy from Joe Dirt. Home is where you make it. That guy? He does have an interesting voice. A lot of body cams with people with cool voices recently.
I know them two Jersey Mike's. Give me a sandwich there.
To Jersey Mike?
Is he just like super drunk? Is that what's happening?
Okay, gotcha. Do you just have your license on you? This is your truck? You were asleep and passed out behind the wheel, and I could smell what's...
Don't do that, please.
I just want to make sure that I'm safe.
Well, yeah, I can do the same thing back.
So, I'm going to ask...
Oh, he's going to get his phone out with the flashlight. Close your eyes.
Nothing wrong here. You know what? Here.
So, if you refuse to step out, I will...
He sounds like that like quintessential witch character in old cartoons. Like, I feel like he's about to start reciting some kind of ancient incantation.
Take you out.
In an instant,
the Tasmanian devil, or that,
yeah. Sudden and dramatic turn for the worse.
So would you be willing to step out for me?
Sir, we need you to step out. I'm not doing that, no. Sir, don't do that, man.
Oh, shit.
You ran on help.
You alright?
Yeah.
You have anybody that's able to pit or no?
I don't think they want to pit because of the trailer.
Unaware that the truck had a trailer attached, an officer joining the pursuit executes a tactical pit maneuver, stopping the vehicle, but the chase isn't over yet.
What? Wait, how would you not know the trailer is attached? Did he have like camouflage on it, like cloaking tech? Is this Tony Stark or something? I feel like you'd see the trailer, right? How did you miss that? Of everything on a truck.
Steve finally comes to a stop in the driveway of his residence.
Oh, you can't touch him now. That's a safe haven. That's a no PvP zone. Oh, maybe this is all an advertisement for his business. For firewood delivery. Maybe that's what it was. He was delivering firewood to Freddy Krueger, so he had to go into his dream palace in order to contact him. So I see. It's all a big misunderstanding. His voice is so cool. Holy shit.
Get away, go in the house.
Who is he to you?
He's my firewood delivery driver. I Uber Eats some firewood.
Okay.
What happened?
I can disclose a little bit.
From US
Jumping curves. I don't even want to get into. Woo, wait.
Steve's wife, who identifies
The
herself
officer's
as
pretty fired
Angela,
up.
will soon share more insights with the officers.
Hurry me, please.
Jesus.
I got hernia. Okay. No, I got bad shoulders.
Scooch up.
Please, I can't.
Well, how in the fuck is this guy doing a firewood delivery job? He's made of glass. How that just doesn't seem like the right profession. Does he deliver the idea of firewood? Like, there's no way he's going to be able to pick up much firewood.
The gravity of the discovery isn't lost on the officers, as they consider how much worse the night could have ended.
Damn, man, firewood delivery is some serious business. This man keeps the stick on him. What the fuck? Just in case the customer gets a little rowdy. You talking about the knife? I mean, that is a big... I don't know. That is a big fucking knife. Maybe it is. It's bigger than a Bowie knife. I mean, he's got like a huge hilt too. Maybe that's how he chops the wood. He like Virgil. He just does one of these, and the firewood just fucking explodes into like a bunch of splinters for him to pick up with his bad shoulders. Those aren't knives. Those are like full-blown short swords.
If you refuse to take the shot, sir.
It sounds like he's just like his voice is perpetually in like a mocking tone. Like he's trying to make fun of somebody else.
Nobody's gonna bail him out. I can tell you that right now. I'm not bailing him out.
Oh, he is not well-liked.
He needs to sober up.
Where's my wife at?
Yeah, she misses you too, Steve. She's on her way to pay you a visit. Oh God!
After being treated and cleared by hospital staff, 60-year-old Steve Beausoleil is taken to the Martin County Jail. Aggravated fleeing causing injury.
Yeah, that was
or
a lot.
damage.
He racked up a lot.
Battery on a law enforcement officer.
Is it possible he was framed? Yeah, someone could have been, I guess, maybe butt chugging the whiskey into Steve without him knowing. That is an option, perhaps. And maybe the dog put a brick on the accelerator on the gas pedal for the 20-minute long police chase. We can't rule out the possibilities. Merry Christmas! Tomorrow's the big day. I heard Santa Claus
I told you, yeah, the light from the PC makes me look really scary. How do I get out of here? Yeah, it does. Okay, well, we got all the pieces, so we go and fix it, I guess. Hey, Mom. Hola, Okasa. How'd I get to my room? Yeah, it's a video game, yeah. Can't find my room, though. Oh, probably down once more, I guess. Was my room through the garden? Eight out of 8. Damn. Damn. Damn.
What happened?
Well, we played some karaoke.
I have to find Hideki. He owes me some explanations.
Oh yeah, this is actually the top movement speed. Oh.
Naomi, what a pleasure to hear from you. I hope your evening lived up to your expectations.
Hideki, what happened tonight? I feel confused.
Confused? There's no reason to be. Your performance was exceptional, Naomi. You won me over. I'm here to tell you that the record contract is yours. You're about to become a pop star.
The music industry, man.
Really?
Shit.
I can't believe it. This is everything I've ever wanted.
Believe it, Naomi. It's all thanks to your talent. Now go home and rest. There'll be a lot to do in the coming days. And I'll contact you with all the details. This is the beginning of a new chapter for you.
Thank you, Hideki. Really, thank you. I can't wait to get started.
Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. Normal waffle like service server on. Only one part found? Yeah, I don't think I'll find them all though. Seems like you gotta find like 8 or 7 or something. The fuck?
What did you do, huh? Did you sleep with him to get that contract?
What? No, nothing like that happened. I just sang, and then... I don't remember.
Don't play innocent with me, you shameless hussy!
I just followed my heart, my passion. I didn't mean to hurt you.
Your heart? Your passion? Pretty words that sound empty when you're on the losing side. Your success has a price, Naomi, and I've paid it. Now, it's as if I don't exist.
Oh shit.
I need to find a hiding place.
Oh. She don't seem that intimidating. Where the hell do I hide? What? No, not there. Oh, it's lagging. Oh, here. I'll hide here. The enemy's too close? Oh, shit. Streamer short. Streamer bald. Streamer washed. Streamer no world records. That's false. I have one. It's unbeatable. Okay, where's the dumpster? And before, I'm actually gonna run into her because I've ran around. The game loops, so I'm just waiting for the container to come back here. Right here, yeah. How's PS2? Let's not forget. It felt like just on release, JK. Still, like you don't get much loot. But I did the first act. Took like 2.5 hours. Yeah. The loot is really an issue in PoE. Like I don't know how it is in endgame, but like you can find if you find a yellow chest. You can find like 2 gold and some white boots or something. Like what? How is that a yellow chest? It's kind of weird. The loot patch is next week. Okay, next week they're having a loot patch. All right. Now what? What do we do? to do. No, JK, the blacksmith. Yeah, that would be the second act. Oh, there we go. What the f-
What's happening to me? How is... I need to calm down. Ooh. I need to myself.
Naomi, we need to talk about your situation. I've heard some news that could change our future prospects.
Hideki, please. We need to find a solution. I'm still the same artist, the same singer.
What's going on?
This won't change anything.
Naomi, you know how much I admire your talent. The entertainment world has its rules, its expectations. I must think
She got Pregunta and the studio didn't want her to get Pregunta for her career.
Please don't leave me alone in this. I need this opportunity. I need to believe that everything will still be possible.
Oh, is that Erica now? Oh, Erica Lowe, pop star. It almost feels like a Black Mirror episode or something, this. Oh, here. Yeah, Low, yeah. I did watch the new season, yeah, I did. I'm watching, like, I haven't watched Black Mirror since, like, season 1 or 2 or something. So I'm, like, watching it backwards. Can't see shit. Oh, here? Oh, that's a piece.
The legend tells of a woman from Kinisaminora, struck by infamy after her pregnancy became known. The villagers believed she had betrayed her husband with the village chief, condemning her to dishonor.
That scene on Limer mode? Yeah, I think I'll play that eventually, I do.
In reality, the truth was much darker and more grim. It was the village chief who forced himself upon her without her consent. Despite her attempts to tell her story, Prejudice and the protection of the village chief's honor prevented the truth from emerging. Unable to bear the weight of injustice and longing for peace, the woman sought refuge at the ancient temple of Kirisame. Here, she found a way to rid herself of the child she was carrying and end her pain. The ancient temple of Kirisame Miura.
The snow. It can't be real. It's as if this city is mocking me.
What the fuck is going on? No, no pregunta, I think. Oh no, pastel. Okay, we gotta find the colors and make it lit, I guess.
Hideki.
I finished the eye
I'm at
game,
the
yeah.
temple. I think I know what to do.
There's not much time, Naomi. If there's a way, you must act now. It's the only way to save your future.
Blue, green, yellow, red. Alright. Colors of the sugars from Sekiro. Oh. Man, it's a crime Sekiro never got a DLC, man. That shit was good. Fuck. Wait, let one of the candles go out? Dude, where's the shrine? Susano. Yeah, true. Where the hell's the shrine? Lag. Okay, this is like the 5th blue candle here. It's probably faster to just die. Also achievements. It's better. We know what to do now. It's easy. gotta do this with 3 more candles. Yep.
Okay, Naomi. You can do this. Just don't panic.
Flush. Nah, we're too far in now. This is definitely not as good as the previous game. But the story is kind of interesting, so... I don't think there's much left, yeah. Are we 90s on YouTube? No, why? Oh yeah, the other one. Yeah, this is probably the first game, yeah. Rebels FX42, Psych. We need yellow. There's a yellow right outside the entrance here, and then red. Spawn then. Fuck off then. SMH. Just don't. Come on, let me get there now. Don't despawn. Yeah, follow me, follow me, follow me, follow me, follow me. Whatever you do, don't despawn. Alright, we did it. So, guys, we did it. The Stutter Engine 5 is real here. Oh my god. Well, I thought I had the red one. Ah, I gotta get the red one. Glad someone got it. Rumkais. Oh, for fuck's sake, really? Agreed. See where. Oh, sword? Oh no, this is Sudoku. Harakiri. all for her career, man. Fuck. It's dark, man. That was a game. What the fuck?
For the delay.
Kept you waiting, huh?
In this video, we'll be looking at the entire story of Metal Gear, or at least its core saga, anyway. Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation 1 pretty much defined my childhood as a gamer. Coming out on the PlayStation in 1998, Metal Gear Solid was a follow-on to two previous games from Kojima and Konami, Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2, which were originally released on the MSX2. Then in 2001, Metal Gear Solid 2 came out for the PlayStation 2, which saw a different protagonist for the majority of the game, Raiden. After that, the franchise went all the way back to the beginning of its timeline with Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater in 2004. The next generation of consoles then saw Konami and Kojima develop and release Metal Gear 4 Guns of the Patriots in 2008. After that, Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker released in 2010, which was initially on the PSP, but later came to other consoles via the HD edition. We then got Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes in 2014, and that itself was a short prologue to 2015's Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. Then came the bitter breakup between Metal Gear mastermind Hideo Kojima and Konami. Their 3-decade partnership had come to an end. Kojima had to leave Metal Gear behind. And Konami did try to make their own Metal Gear game, Survive, which was interesting. But we do have a Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater remake coming soon. It'll be interesting to see what Konami do with that one. In terms of Kojima, well, he went on and developed and released Death Stranding, and we are getting a sequel, Death Stranding 2, at some point. But anyway, we're here to talk about Metal Gear. This video will explain all the plots and story points of all the game and their events, apart from Survive, for obvious reasons, and Portable Ops won't be in this video either, because of some issue with timeline and canonicity. A follow-up video will be coming too at some point explaining the story of Metal Gear Rising, as it's a spin-off title. Finally, please be aware that there will be spoilers in this video for the entire Metal Gear franchise, but with that being said, grab a drink and some snacks, and let's begin. Let's start by introducing ourselves to Jack. Jack was born in 1935, and fresh out of his teens, Jack joined the military. He fought in the Korean War and eventually fell under the mentorship of the Boss. The Boss fought in World War II with the 22nd SAS Regiment, which he actually formed alongside fellow soldier David O. Anyway, Jack and the Boss worked closely together and developed a fighting style known as CQC, which stands for Close Quarters Combat. Jack would view the Boss as a sort of motherly figure. In '54, Jack was a test subject and present at the testing of the H-bomb detonation on Bikini Atoll. Most of his friends and colleagues developed cancer and radiation poisoning as a result, but Jack did not. However, Jack did become sterile. He parted ways with the Boss in 1959. He served in Vietnam and in the US Special Forces and learned various methods of urban survival. During his years in the Green Berets, Jack would earn many commendations. He would then join the CIA's covert ops unit called Fox, earning himself the codename Naked Snake. And this leads us into the first game in the timeline, Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater. It's 1964, and the USA and the USSR are in the throes of the Cold War. A CIA operation known as the Virtuous Mission is taking place, and Snake, under the command of David O, codenamed Major Zero, is being supervised by the boss and supported by a Dr. Clark, codenamed Paramedic. After completing a Halo, which is a high-altitude, low-opening jump, the first of its kind ever attempted, Snake lands in the Soviet region of Selynoyarsk. The region itself is crawling with KGB. Snake is there to extract a Soviet scientist named Nikolai Sokolov. 2 years prior, in 1962, the US government had learned that the Soviets had deployed nukes inside of Cuba, but the Soviets ended up withdrawing them 12 days later as part of a deal with the US. Now, the deal was for Sokolov, who had previously defected to the US, to be sent back to his homeland, but the US underestimated the skills that Sokolov had that would be very useful. Avoiding crocodiles and Soviet soldiers, Snake makes it to Sokolov's location, an abandoned factory. He sneaks into the factory and finds Sokolov. He's burning some papers. He mentions a Colonel Volgin of the GRU, which is Russian military intelligence. Volgin is someone who is known to the CIA as Thunderbolt. Now, it's important to know that sometime before this, Volgin had learned of something called the Philosopher's Legacy. The legacy was something that was held by a secret society known as the Philosophers, who themselves used to be called the Wise Men's Committee up until World War II. The legacy itself is a secret fund to, well, fund illegal activities. It was a fund made up from the money of powerful people all over the world, including China, the Soviets, and the US, and was collected during World War II. At the time Operation Snake Eater takes place, it was thought to have been worth around $100 billion. Volgin's father was actually the man who was in charge of managing the Philosopher's Legacy. During World War II, the Philosophers lost track of these funds due to the chaos of the war, so Volgin Sr. took them for the Soviets and laundered the money through various banks around the world, with the transactions being stored on a microfilm. And Volgin Jr. found the microfilm and inherited the funds illegally. It's not exactly clear what the current status of the Philosophers is at this point, but at some point Volgin had learned of the Philosopher's Legacy through the microfilm, and of course, he learned about the huge amounts of funds. He used these funds to construct a massive fortress in the mountains of Selynoyarsk, and called the fortress Groznygrad, which means terrible fortress. He also used the funds to bankroll the development of weapons and tanks, and he also converted an abandoned prison into a weapons design facility, hiring a Soviet weapons scientist named Alexander Granin. Now, this part is crucial. Granin was hired to bring life to Volgin's designs for some sort of walking tank. However, Granin struggled to bring this to fruition, so after Volgin learned of the development of a weapon named the Shagohod, he wanted that instead. Since the Cuban Missile Crisis in '62, First Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, Nikita Khrushchev, had been trying to pursue a peaceful policy of coexistence with the West. Naturally, certain sections of the Russian military were not happy with this policy, but despite this, Khrushchev had managed to suppress any opposition. However, failures of other policies, along with the assassination of JFK, his biggest partner, had seen his tenure come under threat. One particular group, the Brezhnev faction, are using the opportunity of Khrushchev's waning influence to take power and are planning to overthrow him. Volgin himself is the mastermind of this plot. As I've mentioned, the reason Volgin is there in Selynoyarsk is for a weapon, a tank known as the Shagohod, a nuclear-armed tank, and it's a weapon that could effectively end the Cold War. Sokolov had been developing it under the orders of Khrushchev and had become terrified about the potential of this weapon and its uses, to be able to launch an IRBM into the United States of America, and that is why he is seeking to defect to the US again. Volgin wants the weapon, and Sokolov, hence why the soldiers outside are so plentiful, to prevent Volgin from taking Sokolov. That gives us some context. Now back to the story again. Sokolov compliments Snake on his Russian, to which he responds that he learned from the boss. A call with Major Zero sees him state that they've lost contact with the boss. Nonetheless, Snake is to escort Sokolov to the rendezvous point. Someone is there with them though. They end up surrounded and someone else shows up. One of the soldiers identifies him as being the commander of the Ocelot unit of the Spetsnaz. He's GRU and his name is Major Ocelot, and he's there to capture Sokolov. A face-off occurs, and Ocelot takes out all of the soldiers, showcasing some very good shooting. Ocelot calls for his men and they surround Snake and Sokolov. He recognizes Snake's stance as one he's seen before, from the boss. Ocelot's gun then jams, a rookie error to use a strange technique with a Makarov, and Snake gives the young man some advice to use revolvers instead. Snake then incapacitates Ocelot and his men. Sokolov has run off, so Snake needs to catch up to him. A little further along, he reconvenes with him.
You okay? Those men were from the Ocelot unit. Spetsnaz? Yes. The best crew has to offer. They're coming for me. I'm finished.
Calm down. I'll get you out of here, I promise. And we've got some of the best backup we could ask for.
Look.
That's what they were making you build.
Yes. The Shagohod. The dreaded behemoth. A tank capable of launching nuclear IRBM.
It can launch nuclear missiles from that kind of terrain?
Oh, yes. And without support from friendly units.
A nuclear-equipped tank capable of operating solo. Is that thing finished?
No, this is only the end of Phase 1. It won't be truly finished until we complete Phase 2.
Phase 2?
The weapon's true form. If it is completed and the Colonel gets his hands on it, it will mean the end of the Cold War.
The end of the Cold War?
Yes. And then the Age of Fear will truly begin.
A world war.
I had no choice but to cooperate. I didn't want to die. I wanted to see my wife and child again in America. Please, take me to America, quickly. They cannot complete it without my help.
Got it. Let's go. Boss?
Good work, Jack.
What are you doing here?
Sokolov comes with me. My friends, let us fight together again.
I have waited long for this day.
We will fight with you once more. Welcome back, boss.
Now that all 5 of us are together, it's time we go to the depths of hell itself. It's raining blood. Is he crying?
Kuwabara, Kuwabara. Ah, what a joyful scene.
Colonel Vogan.
Welcome to my country. And to my unit.
Boss, what is this?
I'm defecting to the Soviet Union. Sokolov is a little gift for my new hosts.
Recoilless nuclear warheads. These will make a fine gift for me.
This can't be happening.
Who is he? Another one of your disciples? Are we taking him with us?
No, this one is still just a child. Too pure for us cobras. He has not yet found an emotion to carry into battle.
What are you talking about?
Think you can pull the trigger?
He's seen my face. We can't let him live. If Khrushchev finds out about this, we're finished. He must die.
Wait. He's my apprentice. I'll take care of him.
The new blood has been rejected. Are we done here?
Now, onto Sokolov's research facility.
Shagohod is ours.
A badly beaten, bruised, and injured Snake comes to on the bank of the river with his commander trying to reach him. He tells them about the boss's defection to the Soviets, and they help him get himself patched up. A little later, Snake sees a group of helicopters airlifting the Shagohod and taking it to Volgin's fortress. He has everything he needs now, the Shagohod and Sokolov. Ocelot is on board and he smells something. It's the perfume of someone else on board, Tatiana, a KGB operative, and Sokolov's lover. Volgin takes a kiss of death off of her, a firearm disguised as lipstick, but then gives it back to her, stating that they can use her. Using his gift from the boss, the Davy Crockett launcher, despite pleas from Ocelot not to kill their countrymen, Volgin launches the US nuke at the research facility where the Shagohod had been developed up to that point and completely destroys it. Snake's lift arrives and then he is taken back for debriefing. The CIA seriously consider executing Snake along with Major Zero for what they deem to have been a catastrophic outcome, coupled with the fact that they believe that Snake may have been involved in the boss's defection. With the Soviets wanting full assurances that the nuclear bomb directed at their research facility was not fired by the US, since the aircraft and the nuke being fired from it was a US nuke, Snake would be sent back in to eliminate the boss. The stakes are higher this time, as if Snake is unable to eliminate the boss, then he and Zero will both be killed. But while Snake is on his way back into Selenoyarsk, let's cover a bit of background on the boss. The boss is known as the mother of US Special Forces. Remember I mentioned the Wise Men's Committee earlier on? Well, the boss is the daughter of one of the higher ranking members of the committee, the last remaining child of the philosophers. Later on in her life, the boss would become an instructor at what was now the Philosophers' Charm Schools, training camps that developed spies with the idea of infiltrating foreign countries. During World War II, the boss became an advisor to the Special Air Service, the SAS, and that was where she met Major Zero, with the two forming the 22nd SAS Regiment. In 1942, the boss would then lead a new unit during the Battle of Stalingrad. This unit would become known as the Cobra Unit. There'll be a bit more on the Cobra Unit later on in the video. In November 1951, the boss was participating in atomic testing in the Nevada desert, and what she witnessed affected her. Snake being a test subject on Bikini Atoll is what drew her to Snake. They were both slowly being eaten away due to other people's karma, and won't ever get the chance to die of old age peacefully. In 1960, the boss saw what she deemed to be a perfect future. This was after the Soviets had managed to launch their Sputnik satellite during the space race. She speaks of the USA's panic and NASA's subsequent Mercury program, in which they experimented using chimpanzees in rockets. Meanwhile, the Soviets were planning to send the first man into space. The US wanted human data, so they secretly sent a human being into space, beating the Soviets to it. They chose the boss. Her being sent there meant that she would be exposed to high levels of radiation. Since she was involved in the atomic testing in Nevada, she was already irradiated. Anyway, from space she saw the planet, and she realized that space exploration is just another game in the power struggle between the USA and the Soviets, as was the entire Cold War itself. She thought that in terms of the Earth itself, communism and capitalism aren't really that important. But the people in power couldn't, or wouldn't, see it the same way. The following year, the boss had been sent to Cuba, and this was during the Bay of Pigs invasion and part of Operation 40. The boss saw the US government betray the Cuban exiles by refusing to send in air support, meaning that the Cuban exiles were obliterated and she could only watch it happen. This made her question why the country she'd sacrificed so much for would betray her, so she went underground. But that's enough about the boss's background for now. Let's get back into the story. Following a tense week of interrogations and recovering from his injuries, Snake successfully enters into Soviet airspace via drone on the 30th of August 1964. Snake's mission is now to kill Volgin, destroy the Shagohod, secure Sokolov, and to kill the boss. Enduring a bumpy landing in Selinoyarsk, Snake's immediate objective, however, is to make contact with Adam. Adam being one of two former codebreakers for the National Security Agency who both defected to the Soviets in 1960. Sneaking through the jungle, Snake comes across a horse. He is then surprised by the boss, who comments that death wasn't ready for him yet. She easily disarms Snake, kicks his ass, destroys his weapon and the drone, and tells him to go home, mentioning that the border is 16 miles south of there. Before she leaves, she tells Snake that she didn't defect, but that she's simply loyal to her purpose, to the end, and that he, Snake, needs to decide whether he's loyal to his country or to her, his mentor. Given that the smoke from the destroyed drone will attract scouting parties looking for an intruder, Snake pushes on and makes it to the rendezvous, the same place he'd previously met Sokolov, and to his surprise, Adam is not there. Remember I mentioned there were two codebreakers that defected? Well, this is the other one, Eva. Eva says that she's the replacement for Adam. She takes out some soldiers and gives Snake a replacement weapon and a scientist's disguise, which will help Snake gain access to the lab where Sokolov is being held. After giving him directions, Eva tells Snake that he should get some sleep, and he does so. While he's sleeping, Eva is outside being shifty. When Snake awakens, he discovers that the building he's in is surrounded by Ocelot's GRU unit. Eva escapes while Snake stays and dispatches the entire unit. Hearing gunshots, he investigates and finds Ocelot holding Eva at gunpoint. He notices her perfume. Ocelot, who took Snake's previous advice and got hold of a single-action army revolver, commits another rookie error and has miscounted his shots. So Eva attacks Ocelot and she vanishes into the jungle on her bike, saying she needs to get back before he does. Snake then sets off for the lab. On the way, he encounters Ocelot again and a tense standoff occurs. After he shows off a bit, Ocelot battles Snake. The young soldier is no match for Snake though and is easily and swiftly defeated. Snake is then attacked by a swarm of hornets, as are Ocelot and his men. Ocelot runs off and Snake, desperate to escape the hornets, jumps down into a chasm, and he ends up in a dark cave. It's about time we look at who the Cobra unit are. So remember earlier on in the section discussing the boss, that she was involved during World War II, I mentioned that she led a unit called the Cobra unit. This unit was created by the philosophers to help combat the Axis powers of Nazi Germany, Italy and Japan. They would be used during the war for the most horrific operations. Top secret operations that no one could ever find out about. Due to this, the Cobra unit members would carry a hidden microbomb on them, which would destroy their body if they were ever compromised and would also be detonated upon death. Truth is that, as we saw earlier, the members of the Cobra unit are special. They have certain powers. This is because they are superhuman soldiers that were created as a result of the philosophers and their experiments with parasite therapy. There were 7 members. Well, there still are, kind of, but let me explain. Back in the war, the boss, whose Cobra name was the Joy, and another member called the Sorrow were in a relationship. They had conceived a child. During a rather intense battle, the boss was distracted by her pregnancy and got shot, and she entered a 3-day coma. She recovered, and whilst heavily pregnant in another battle, she got shot again, and then went into labour right there on the battlefield. The baby had to be delivered quickly, so she was cut open, which resulted in a large scar on her torso. The child was then taken away by the philosophers, and that child was Ocelot. The Cobra unit then disbanded due to tensions inside the Philosophers. The Sorrow went back to the Soviet Union and the boss was sent by the CIA on a mission to Selenoyarsk in 1962. The boss and the Sorrow were enemies, and she needed to kill the Sorrow, but in reality, the US and Russian philosophers had backed the boss into a corner and ordered her to kill the Sorrow or they'd kill Ocelot. The Sorrow actually gave up his life willingly so that the boss could live on and to protect their child. The Cobras were then reconvened by the boss upon a defection, and this leads us back into the events of the game. Continuing through the cave, Snake is confronted by one of the Cobras, the Pain, who Snake had previously seen on the helicopter a week earlier. The parasites that philosophers used on him gave him the ability to control insects through his body secreting pheromones. As well as this, he was unable to feel pain due to his body also releasing high levels of adrenaline. He calls the Cobras the sons of the boss. The Pain throws everything he can at Snake, but again, Snake easily overpowers the Pain and takes him down. He falls to the ground, dies, and as mentioned before, his microbomb detonates, destroying his body. Leaving the cave, Snake continues on towards the lab and has to avoid various surveillance drones. Arriving at the exterior of some warehouse, which looks like a loading dock, the woman from the chopper, Tatiana, is there with Volgin, as is Sokolov. Sokolov says that he won't go anywhere with them, so Volgin electrocutes Tatiana in order to force Sokolov to obey. Ocelot shows up too and calls Sokolov a traitor. He torments him by placing a single bullet in one of 3 revolvers and juggles them, pulling the triggers and causing Sokolov to wet himself. The boss turns up as well and reprimands Ocelot. They take Sokolov away, and the boss informs Volgin that Snake killed the Pain. He's furious. Another member of the Cobra unit, the End, is wheeled in. He's an extremely old sniper who some even called the father of sniping. When I say old, I mean like over 100 years old, hence why he's basically immobile. Another Cobra appears out of nowhere, and the boss tells this one, the Fear, that she's leaving Snake to him. He runs across the water and leaves. Volgin speaks to Tatiana and indicates that her job is now to entertain him, and they leave. Snake momentarily spots a phantom behind the boss, the Sorrow. The boss then leaves. If Snake is really quick, he can take the End out straight away, but for the sake of story, and although it's fun, we'll just say that he let the old guy go. With the dock clear, Snake heads through the warehouses. He eventually reaches the exterior of the labs. Sneaking past or taking out any guards that are patrolling, he enters the building. Stealthily making his way through, Snake enters an office. Inside is a man who introduces himself as the self-proclaimed best weapons scientist in the Soviet Union, and that thanks to his efforts, the Soviets were able to stamp out the Nazis. This is Alexander Granin, the scientist Volgin had brought in to design him a walking tank. He'd been researching ways to combine both infantry and artillery into one unstoppable machine, a bipedal walking machine capable of carrying nuclear warheads, exactly what Volgin had asked him for. Granin called it Metal Gear. However, due to Sokolov's arrival, Granin has been deemed surplus to requirements, and his research has halted due to Volgin's preference for the Shagohod instead, hence why Granin is drowning his sorrows. He says that he's going to send the Metal Gear documents to a friend in the US. He says that walking tanks will become a revolution when it comes to weaponry, as they can go anywhere. A tank cannot. Snake asks where Sokolov is, and Granin tells him that Sokolov and the Shagohod are at Groznygrad, the massive fort that Volgin had built using the Philosopher's War Chest. Snake goes to leave to head to Groznygrad, and Granin tells Snake that he's mad and will certainly be killed. He wants to help Snake, and as a reward for complimenting his shoes. No, seriously. After Granin tells Snake that the shoes were a gift from the KGB operative Tatiana, Granin tells Snake how he can get into the fortress via an underground tunnel that runs along the perimeter of the fortress. In return, he asks that Snake get Sokolov out of there and to destroy the Shagohod. He also gives Snake a keycard and tells him it's for a door out of the warehouse that leads into the jungle, and that at the far end of the jungle, Snake can make his way into the mountains. Leaving and cautiously walking back through the forest, Snake is shot in the leg by a bolt which is coated in spider venom. This is the work of the Fear, who is able to use active camouflage. He's a weird, disgusting man creature who is known as the Spider Soldier, and his appearance would strike fear into enemies. Snake starts to succumb to the venom, and it's not long until it will paralyze him. When the battle begins, Snake uses some anti-venom and gets back into the fight. The Fear is sneaky on account of his camo, but eventually Snake avoids his bolts and is able to outfox him and bring him down. The Fear explodes due to his microbomb, and Snake has to dodge a load of poisoned bolts. With the fear taken care of, Snake makes his way back to the warehouses and uses the keycard Granin gave him on the door. As Granin said, the door leads back out into the jungle, and Snake receives a call from Eva. She says that she's in the fortress of Groznygrad, and that Sokolov is there too, putting the finishing touches on the Shagohod. The Phase 2 tests are done, meaning that very soon they won't need Sokolov anymore. Eva says that using the route Granin told him about means he'll need a different keycard in order to get into the actual fortress. She arranges to meet Snake in some ruins at the top of the mountain. Finally, she warns him about another Cobra lying in wait for him at the foot of the mountain. It's the decrepit old sniper, the End. Snake continues on until he reaches the foot of the mountain. The End lies in wait. He doesn't have a spotter. He doesn't need one. He has a parrot that acts sort of like a spotter for him. His body is also able to adapt to different situations in terms of camouflage. But then when he senses Snake, he awakens as if by instinct alone. When the battle starts, Snake can do a couple of things. Since the End is so damned old, he can save the game, wait 8 days before playing again, and when opening up the game again, the End will have died naturally. If Snake saves and awakens a few days later, however, the End will surprise Snake and will tranquilize him. Snake will wake up in a cell and have to go back and face the End again. But for the sake of story, Snake stays to battle the End and takes him out. As with the others, his microbomb detonates. Heading into the tunnel that Granin mentioned, Snake climbs up a ridiculously long ladder, classic Kojima, and arrives at the mountaintop base. Climbing the mountain and being careful to avoid an attack helicopter, Snake makes it inside the base and meets with Eva. He walks in on her getting changed and notices the scars on her back, a sign of her having been tortured by Volgin. Eva says that Khrushchev's forces are on their way to the fortress, and Volgin is gathering his troops for a meeting with Khrushchev. Due to this, it means that there's a gap in the security in the fort, so now is a perfect time to move. Eva gives Snake the key he'll need for the door in the underground tunnel. She tells Snake that he needs to be a colonel in order to get to the Shagohod, so she shows him a picture. It's of Volgin and his lover, a Major Rykov. Snake needs to pretend that he's him by stealing his uniform. They discuss an escape plan for when Snake manages to grab Sokolov. Snake looks down and notices Eva's boots, and that's an important detail that'll come up later on. After speaking about Snake's relationship with the boss, and discussing their growing feelings for one another outside, Eva goes down to Groznygrad via her bike. Snake scouts out Groznygrad and sees Volgin beating the crap out of a barrel. The truth is that inside said barrel is Granin. Volgin had obviously found out about his betrayal and kills Granin. Ocelot approaches and Volgin pulls a transmitter from Granin's shoe, indicating that there's a spy there at the fortress, but Volgin does not suspect it to have been Granin himself. Volgin mentions that some C3 explosives have been stolen. The boss arrives and shows them the Fear's crossbow, indicating to both Volgin and Ocelot that the Fear is dead, as well as the End. Tatiana arrives too. Volgin is furious again, but the boss says that she will take care of Snake. She warns that the US want to destroy the Shagohod and steal Volgin's inheritance. She leaves and says that she's going to get the Davy Crockett. When Volgin leaves, Ocelot turns to Tatiana, notices her perfume, realizes it's familiar. He notices her boots and says, "Nice boots." He's onto her. So Eva is Tatiana. Who didn't see that coming? Eva left the correct boots at the mountaintop base. Anyway, Snake needs to make his way down to the fortress, so he heads into the underground tunnel and makes his way down the stairs. Snake moves through a large open area, and he's about to meet yet another Cobra. He meets the Fury. The Fury was actually the first man the Soviets sent into space, and not Yuri Gagarin. But entering Earth's atmosphere, coming back, an accident happened and he was burned alive, suffering severe burns all over his body. Due to this, he became obsessed with fire. Oh, and he developed a burning hatred towards the world in general, so that's always good. Wearing a spacesuit and wielding a flamethrower, the Fury tells Snake that he'll feel the scorching pain of being burned alive. As he did with the other Cobra members, Snake takes the Fury down. He mentions the boss before he dies, saying that the Cobras are done and that she needs to live on. He says that he's off to join the Sorrow and his microbomb explodes. Being attacked by what appears to be the spirit of the Fury, Snake leaves the area and gets to safety. Carrying on and moving through the tunnel system, Snake climbs a ladder and is inside the fortress now. Moving around the various areas, he makes it inside a building. With the building heavily patrolled, Snake manages to find Major Rykov, incapacitates him, hides his body in a locker, and takes his uniform, using it with a mask as a disguise. This mask was actually made for a previous operation at Groznygrad that was scrapped, but Snake had it with him for Snake Eater should he need it. Heading to the West Wing, Snake gains access using his new disguise. He overhears a conversation between who he believes to be Tatiana and Sokolov, who gives something to her. She pulls out the kiss of death but uses it to apply lipstick, and she then leaves. Snake speaks with Sokolov. He says that he'll get Sokolov out of there, but Sokolov says that he's too late as the Shagohod has now been completed. He explains that Phase 2 allows the Shagohod to launch an ICBM straight into the US itself, and this is done by accelerating the Shagohod. Volgin is planning to mass produce the Shagohod and deploy them all over the Soviet Union. He also plans to use these Shagohods to support mass uprising throughout the Third World. With the funds of the Philosopher's Legacy, he will be unstoppable. Eventually, the entire planet will be at war. Sokolov has an idea and tells Snake that the fuel used in the rocket engines is stored inside a tank. If Snake can blow up the tank using some C3, that will likely blow up the entire hangar as well. Unfortunately, the C3, as Volgin mentioned, has been stolen by a female spy, Tatiana or Eva. Sokolov says that she managed to get into Groznygrad by becoming Volgin's lover. Snake thought that Tatiana was Sokolov's lover, but Sokolov says he only loves 2 women, and that's his wife and daughter back in America. Sokolov explains that Tatiana is a spy working for Khrushchev. He says that the item he gave her was the experimental data for the Shagohod. He insists that Snake destroys the Shagohod, and saying that he's there to rescue Sokolov, he says to Snake that he's not going anywhere, and he should leave him there. He says that Khrushchev has abandoned him, and that if he returns to his country, he will just be thrown into the gulag. He also says that if he went back to the US, he'd be forced to make more weapons and machines that are capable of mass destruction. Their chat is interrupted as Volgin approaches, so Snake puts on his disguise. Volgin suspects something, as it's suspicious that Major Rykov is in there after Volgin was waiting for him in his room. He grabs Snake's nether region and deduces that this in fact is not his lover, but an imposter. Volgin shoots Sokolov in the leg twice, causing Snake to disarm Volgin. The boss enters the room. Bad news for Snake as once again she gives him a beatdown. Volgin goes to shoot Snake, but the boss gives him a beatdown too. Volgin announces his intention to torture Snake for hurting his boyfriend and beats Snake up, badly. Having been knocked unconscious, Snake is then tied up and comes to, finding that Volgin has beaten the living daylights out of Sokolov and has killed him. Volgin continues to torture Snake, demanding to know what the CIA know about him, trying to get him to reveal that the CIA are after the legacy. The boss enters along with Tatiana, and she says that he won't tell him anything, as she's trained him not to break. Volgin is a moron, and basically tells everyone there where the Philosopher's Legacy is, in an underground vault in Groznygrad. A transmitter falls from Snake, and the boss says that she planted it on him to track his movements. Volgin says that he needs the boss to prove that she's not loyal to Snake by cutting out his eyes. The boss is hesitant, and Tatiana stops the boss from doing it. She says that Snake has suffered enough. Ocelot then outs Tatiana as the spy, saying that he knows her smell. He grabs her breast and she gives him a slap. He pulls out 3 revolvers again and carries out his party trick, leading to Snake intervening and getting his right eye destroyed as payment for his troubles. The boss reprimands Ocelot again and Volgin leaves. The boss then shoots Snake in the leg and gives him the gun. The same phantom shows up behind the boss, showing a codec frequency. The boss tells Snake to run and she leaves. Eva then tells Snake to get out via the sewers and to head west, as she's prepared an escape route for them. Snake is then patched up and thrown into a cell. Snake can talk to the guard, who reveals that his name is Johnny, that he's pretty lonely and used to live in the US before the Cold War, and even had a wife and kid, and he wants to see his family again. His kid's name was Johnny too. He pulls out a photo of his family. During the conversation, Snake sees the same codec frequency, 144.75. After the conversation, Snake calls the frequency and the cell door unlocks. Surprising poor Johnny, Snake knocks the guy out and leaves the area. Heading back across the outside areas, Snake enters the sewers. Eva calls and says that Colonel Volgin found out Snake escaped and now the entire fortress is on red alert. She says that due to this red alert, Snake won't be able to get out of the fortress as the exits from the sewers are sealed off. A unit has been sent to the sewers to find Snake, so Snake heads north through the sewers, avoiding attack dogs. He eventually makes it to a long tunnel and runs towards light and to an exit. He's being chased by Volgin's soldiers. Ocelot's Gru soldiers and more dogs. Snake standing on the ledge, Ocelot appears and does some gloating. Ocelot is fanning around with his stupid game of luck with one bullet in the gun and pulling the trigger, so Snake takes this opportunity to fall off the ledge and into the water below. He is carried downstream but passes out underwater. Snake enters into a burning forest. He is confronted by the ghost of the Sorrow, the ghost that has been assisting Snake throughout his mission. The Sorrow makes it clear that Snake is in some sort of spiritual realm. Remember I mentioned that the philosophers were trying to force the boss to kill the Sorrow? Well, she complied in order to save their son, Ocelot, and shot him in the left eye. This is signified by the fact that he weeps blood out of his left eye. His remains lie near to the place where Snake was injured on the riverbank 1 week prior. His power was that he was a medium, and this meant that he could communicate with the spirit world, and he could evoke the spirits of the dead. Anyway, the Sorrow tells Snake that he will know the sorrow of the lives of those he has ended. Snake walks down the river and sees the ghosts, the souls of all the people he'd killed on his mission, including the members of the Cobra unit. After a long walk down the river, Snake comes to and swims to the surface. A call with Eva sees her tell Snake to seek out a cave behind a waterfall. Finding the cave, Eva arrives in style. She gives him his equipment back along with a fancy new eye patch. Cooking some snakes and some fish on a fire, Eva and Snake talk. The two grow closer. Eva then pulls a transmitter out of Snake's back, put in there by Ocelot in the torture room. Snake throws the transmitter on the fire and Eva hands him the C3 explosives that she'd stolen from Groznygrad. She tells him the same thing that Sokolov did, that he needs to use the C3 to blow up the fuel tanks inside the hangar containing the Shagohod. After Eva leaves, Snake heads up through a tunnel and comes back out in Groznygrad again. A vehicle arrives and parks on top of the great back to the tunnel, so Snake's path back through there is a no-go. He eventually manages to sneak into the hangar. Making his way through it, Snake plants explosives on the various fuel tanks. Whilst doing so, Snake gets a call from Eva, stating that she's placed her share of the C3 on the rail bridge, covering their escape attempt. After he's finished placing the charges, Snake is confronted by Volgin and Ocelot, who it turns out have actually captured Eva. The boss appears and disarms Snake, again, and the two fight using the CQC they developed together, but the boss once again gets the better of Snake. Whilst Ocelot puts a gun in Snake's face, he sees the Sorrow again. He's telling Snake how much time he has left before the C3 goes off. Volgin says that he found Eva inside his underground vault, and she stole the microfilm with the details regarding the Philosopher's legacy. Seems that Volgin telling them all about the location of the microfilm back in the torture room was actually a clever ploy to flush out the spy amongst them. Volgin kicks Eva, which angers Snake. Ocelot states that it wasn't her perfume that gave her away, but it was the smell of gasoline from her bike. Eva attempts to use the kiss of death on Volgin, but Volgin stops her and subjects her to more electrical torture. He explains about the Philosopher's legacy and how he used the Philosopher's spy network, which was still intact, to contact the boss and suggested that she defect. Volgin says that the conflict within the Philosophers after World War II tore apart Unity. Volgin wants to use the Philosopher's legacy in order to restore that. He wanted to use the Shagohod and the Cobra unit since they only obeyed the boss, but Snake has taken out most of the Cobras. He says that there's nothing the US can do to stop them. He gives the legacy microfilm to the boss and tells her to take it someplace safe. She says that she'll go and see if there are any signs of sabotage and that she'll dispose of Eva, leaving Volgin to deal with Snake. However, the boss whispers to Eva and says, "Leave everything to me," and tells Volgin to fight like a warrior. What is the boss up to? Ocelot wants to get even and wants to face Snake in a duel. Volgin's not having it though and wants to kill Snake himself. Snake and Volgin then face off. The Sorrow appears again, telling Snake he only has 5 or so minutes until the C3 explodes. Ocelot brandishes a weapon and a knife and gives them to Snake. However, he cannot use his weapons against Volgin, so must defeat him in hand-to-hand combat. Throughout the battle, Ocelot is throwing items down to Snake, offering him support. Eventually, Volgin tires and tells Ocelot to shoot Snake. Ocelot refuses, saying he made a promise to the boss. Volgin tells Ocelot to find the explosives that Snake had planted. Snake and Volgin continue to fight, but eventually he defeats the Colonel. An exhausted Snake hurries out of the hangar. Ocelot sees that Snake has defeated Volgin and escaped, and he smiles. Eva shows up on her bike and Snake jumps into the sidecar. They speed away from the hangar as the C3 detonates. Eva tells Snake that the boss actually just let her go. Snake says he has one last thing to do, to kill the boss. Eva tells him that the boss is already at the lake waiting for Snake, where his and Eva's escape transport is waiting. She says that she doesn't want him to fight the boss. As they're about to leave though, it appears that the blast didn't take out the Shagohod, or Volgin for that matter, as he's piloting it. Attempting to escape, Eva drives to avoid the Shagohod while Snake has to take out many soldiers. Eva says that they can lure the Shagohod to the bridge that she'd rigged, and hopefully they can sink it. Ocelot gives chase too, however, and a brief chase through the burning hangar sees Ocelot nearly die via falling debris, but Snake fires an RPG at the debris, saving Ocelot's life. Ocelot gives up the chase, and after being pursued on the runway by Volgin and other soldiers on the bikes, the bridge is in sight. They lure the Shagohod to the other side, and Snake shoots the explosives on the bridge's supports. The Shagohod appears to have fallen into the water, but Snake and Eva's elation is short-lived, as the Shagohod is very much still working, and they are forced into a fight against Volgin and the machine. But using RPGs, Snake manages to defeat it. Volgin, though, is persistent as ever, and he uses his electrical abilities in order to control the Shagohod with his own body. Eva uses herself as bait, and Snake continues to hammer the Shagohod with the RPGs, and uses a sniper rifle to defeat Volgin himself. After the battle, the rains come. Volgin then dies, and they are pursued again. Eva and Snake finally escape Groznygrad, however, Eva's bike is destroyed and she's badly injured. Snake patches Eva up with the help of paramedic. Eva's weak, but they need to walk the rest of the way through the jungle and must evade or kill many patrolling soldiers. Despite their slim odds for survival, they make it to the lake. The boss is there, waiting. She uses the final portable nuke and completely destroys Groznygrad. She tells Snake all about her experience working for the US and their various programs and operations during the Cold War, and how it made her disillusioned. Finally, she tells Snake that she has radioed Russian fighter jets to bomb the area as a way to ensure that Snake finishes his mission. The two face off for the final time. A tense and fierce battle between the two now takes place. Due to Snake's skill set getting better during his mission, his skills are now a match for the boss, and she regularly compliments him on that fact. Snake eventually gets the better of his mentor and defeats her. As she lies there dying, the boss hands the microfilm containing the details for the philosopher's legacy over to Snake and asks him to keep it safe. She gives him her weapon, and she asks him to kill her. Snake is reluctant to do so, but he grants her request. The spirits of both the boss and the Sorrow are now at peace and can move on. Heading to the Wig where Eva is waiting, they take off. However, there's one more thing. Ocelot is desperate to settle a score. He boards the plane, fights with Snake, and eventually challenges him to a duel. Ocelot wants them to share their real names. Snake lies and tells him his name is John. And Ocelot shares his. Ocelot was born with the name Adamska. He was the other NSA codebreaker that defected, and the Adam that was meant to meet Snake instead of Eva. He was undercover as an operative of the GRU. Turns out that Ocelot was actually working for the CIA all along. They duel and both shoot but do each other no harm. Ocelot laughs at Snake's confusion and tells him that the bullet put into the revolver was a blank. Ocelot says, "Until they meet again," and the two smile at one another before Ocelot jumps off of the plane and into the lake, allowing him and Eva to take off and leave. After landing in Alaska a little while later, Snake and Eva sheltered in an abandoned cabin and got cozy with one another. But while Snake is sleeping, Eva is preparing to leave and records Snake a message. She leaves and Snake awakens in the morning to find that Eva has taken the Philosopher's Legacy and the data from the Shagohod. He listens to the recording. She reveals that she's a triple agent. She's not working for the US and was never an NSA codebreaker. The two codebreakers who defected were both men. She's not working for the Soviets and Khrushchev either, but she is working for China, where the Philosophers are still active, and they wanted Eva to get the Philosopher's Legacy from Volgin. China also wanted to get their own nuclear weaponry capabilities going too, and the Shagohod's launch data helps them do that. She says that she was supposed to kill Snake but chose to spare him, not only because she'd fallen in love with him, but also because she'd made a promise to the boss to keep Snake alive. She also says that she was a former student of the Philosophers, as Eva attended one of the Philosopher's Charm schools, where, remember, the boss was previously an instructor, so the boss saw straight through her cover. She says that the boss's defection was actually complete and utter bollocks, as she was a double agent initially sent to infiltrate Volgin's operation by the US in order to obtain the Philosopher's legacy. After Volgin used the US nuke to destroy the Soviets' research facility and fearing the blowback from the Soviets for their botched operation, the US left the boss out to dry, marking her as a rogue agent and a defector. The US government had told Snake she defected as they desperately wanted the Philosopher's legacy, and they wanted the Shagohod destroyed. The boss had to be killed by one of their own, so of course, Snake was sent back in under threat of execution if he did not carry out his mission. Anyway, Snake goes back to the US and to the CIA headquarters in Langley. He receives a warm reception for the duty he'd done for his country. Major Zero is there, as is Sigint, real name Donald Anderson, and paramedic. Also there is the US President Lyndon B. Johnson. Johnson awards Snake a medal, calls him a true patriot, and gives Snake the new codename Big Boss, and the top brass there talk of his skill and how he could be the man to head up a brand new Fox infiltration unit for the US Army. Snake, though, learning of how the boss had been betrayed by the country and government she'd given her life to protect, well, this didn't sit right with him. Major Zero tries to congratulate him, but knowing that he'd been sold a lie by the government and that he'd killed his beloved mentor believing she was a traitor, fills Snake with shame and regret. He leaves without speaking to anyone. He then visits her grave in Arlington Cemetery, and he sheds a tear for his former mentor. The lies and cover-ups by the US government would paint the boss as a war criminal when she was nothing of the sort, and then painting him as the hero would mark a change in Snake. In the aftermath of these events in the same year, Nikita Khrushchev is ousted and Brezhnev becomes first secretary in his place. Thanks to Eva obtaining the data from the Shagohod, China's nuclear program ramped up, and on October 16, 1964, they conducted their first nuclear test. In 1965, Sigint joined ARPA, and over the years Snake would attempt to track down Eva, but in 1968 she disappeared whilst in Hanoi. After Snake Eater, Snake retired and left the Fox unit. He attempted to become a hunting guide, but this didn't last long. His legend remained, but despite being Big Boss, he felt that he didn't deserve the title Boss, so he continued to use the name Naked Snake. Zero dissolved the American Philosophers and reformed it as an organization called the Patriots or the Lalilulelo, and Zero invites Ocelot to join, and he also recruited Sigint and Paramedic. Around 1971, Eva had been tracked down by Snake in Hanoi and rescued. Since she'd been expelled from China due to her failure to deliver the real Philosopher's legacy, and instead having unknowingly delivered a fake, she went to America and joined the Patriots too. With Big Boss on board with the Patriots now, they have their 6 founding members. The ideology of this organization was simple. It was to follow Big Boss's vision of a world united, with Big Boss being at the center of it, and a figure that people would look to and who they would want to follow. However, the interpretation of this was seen slightly differently by Zero and Big Boss. Zero saw it as the world being under the control of a single group, ensuring unity of thought and awareness. The other Patriots followed his lead, whereas Big Boss only wanted to carry on the wishes of the boss, that the world's soldiers would not be pawns to be used by worldwide governments. Big Boss saw Zero trying to create stories, both true and false, to elevate the legend of Big Boss, so he would almost be viewed as an idol. He saw Zero acting a similar way to the American Philosophers, in the way that they used and manipulated the boss. The internal conflict between Big Boss and Zero due to their clashing ideologies would grow, and Zero came up with a plan should Big Boss decide to leave the Patriots. This was a secret project called Les Enfants Terribles, and it was carried out with ATGC Incorporated, who were a US biotech company, and the project was also supported by DARPA. DARPA being the Defense and Advanced Research Projects Agency. Zero got Dr. Clark, or Paramedic, on board, which was a given, as she worked for ATGC, and he got Eva on board too, and they took Big Boss's DNA with the intention of making clones of Big Boss. Eva became the surrogate mother to these clones, and eventually 2 were born with their ability to reproduce taken away. Engineered out. Naturally, Big Boss found out about this, and furious, he parted ways with the Patriots, wanted nothing to do with Eva, and formed his own group of mercenaries who would call themselves Militaires Sans Frontières, which translates as an army without borders. This was done to further the dying wishes of the boss. Eva would leave soon after, but Ocelot would stay with the Patriots and would spy for Big Boss and for Eva.
You parted ways, as did Eva, leaving only Anderson and Clark still with him. I maintained limited contact, although truth be told, we were just keeping tabs on one another. The reason was always you.
Now this is when Zero lost his way and lost control, for that matter. He wanted an orderly world governed by rules. Lots of wars would grow his fortune, and he had influence stretching all the way to the White House. As mentioned, Paramedic and Sigint would stay with the Patriots, but both would become hungry for power and succumb to corruption. The Patriots would then come to be known as Cypher in 1974.
Zero created Cypher, an information network to tap into every corner of the globe. Woven together, Cypher's arteries make the world just one big organism, and that's not all. It also monitors the thorn in Zero's side. That's you, tracking your coordinates wherever you might go. The further you strayed from your roots, the larger Zero became. It's as if he was trying to close the gap between you.
Big Boss, who we'll now just refer to as Snake from this point, has his troops stationed on the Barranquilla coast of Colombia. On 4th of November 1974, the troops are undergoing training. One of MSF's commanders, McDonald Kazuhiro Miller, approaches, and he's got 2 people with him. Heading into the base's office, Snake speaks with the visitors. The man is Ramon Galvez Mena, a scholar who is part of the Costa Rican government, something called University for Peace, and with him is his student, Paz Ortega Andrade. They want the MSF's help. They explain that an unknown and very well-funded army has entered Costa Rica. He says that Costa Rica doesn't have its own army, as their constitution as a nation states that the army has been abolished, something called the Peace Constitution. There's something fishy going on, as the Costa Rican government claim that this mysterious army are a multinational security outfit hired by the Developmental Department of Costa Rica. However, Galvez does not believe this at all. He thinks this because of their highly advanced weaponry and equipment, which is in high supply. Galvez says that he suspects that the CIA may have something to do with this army being there through funding their activities. This causes an anger to grow inside Snake. Galvez believes that the US sees Central America as its backyard, that even after the Cuban tensions during the Cold War, Costa Rica's relationship with the US has remained balanced. Galvez pleads with Snake and Miller to help drive this army out of the country, as Costa Rica's own deterrent. As payment, Galvez says that he will give them an offshore base of operations off the coast of the Caribbean and a chopper for transport. Miller states that this is perfect for MSF, as the army needs someplace permanent that they can settle. Galvez adds that they'll have the full but unofficial support of the Costa Rican government. Snake has reservations though. He accuses Galvez of thinking MSF are just a pack of dogs of war. Snake tries to convince Galvez to try and negotiate instead, but he's reluctant, saying that the government's hands are tied. Galvez then states that he's not there on his government's behalf. He says that this force have a supply port north of Puerto Limon. Paz stumbled upon it whilst she was searching for a friend who was lost, and she got captured. They tortured her, but she eventually managed to escape. Since Paz lost people close to her due to war, she hates war. Paz then asks Snake to get this army out of Costa Rica. Once again, Snake declines. Having a private talk with Miller, Snake conveys his worry that if they settle somewhere, the MSF will at some point become the warmongers themselves. Then, Miller and Snake realise that if the CIA are backing this military, then Galvez is likely a KGB agent. Miller says that there'd be no turning back, as allying themselves with a KGB agent would mean making an enemy of their homeland. Paz and the Professor enter the room, and after he uses his prosthetic hand to light Snake's cigar, Snake and Miller confront the Professor about his affiliation. Galvez neither confirms nor denies his KGB affiliation, but he explains his mission. The KGB wants Central America in order to build a socialist stronghold and use that to split North and South America in two. That would be crippling to the US, and Latin America would be within reach of the Soviet Union. Galvez firmly believes that whoever controls Central America will win the Cold War. He highlights the US-backed Somoza regime in Nicaragua. The Somoza family ruled Nicaragua from 1936 for 43 years. It was a dictatorship and passed down from father to son and so on, and this dictatorship maintained a favourable relationship with the US. Galvez says that the KGB had already begun providing aid to a socialist party known as Sandinista National Liberation Front, a group inspired by what Fidel Castro and Che Guevara achieved in Cuba in 1960. Galvez says that it's clear that the CIA-backed armed group in Costa Rica are attempting to disrupt their efforts over the border in Nicaragua. That's not all, apparently. Galvez says that the CIA have something else planned too, but that he does not yet know what that is. He needs Snake and the MSF to find out what that something is. He asks Snake to infiltrate the facility where Paz was imprisoned and tortured, and once again asks them to drive this army out of the country. Miller asks about Paz. She doesn't know that Galvez is KGB, and that he's there to disrupt US and CIA operations. He explains that whilst Paz was able to escape her captors, her friend was not so lucky and didn't escape. He then plays Snake and Miller a recording on a tape that Paz took during her escape.
What is that? A quetzal?
The phoenix bird. Paz's friend was researching birds. She went out into the jungle to record bird calls and stumbled upon this.
So what?
Now it gets interesting.
Poisonous. I need to get rid of it. I chase it back to its nest. You can't. The snake's too vicious. It's all many people. I chase it away. It will bite you unless you kill it. Go home.
Boss. Voice print analysis confirms that this voice is indeed that of the legendary hero and criminal, the boss.
What?
The other hasn't been identified. Female in her 30s with a British accent. The song playing in the background was a hit in 1973.
What's it going to be? Loyalty to your country or loyalty to me? Your country or your mentor? Your mission or your beliefs? I am loyal to myself.
Boss is alive in Costa Rica. As I understand it, she was your commander, fought by your side. And that you killed her under orders from the CIA, thus surpassing her to become the hero known as Big Boss.
With Snake reeling from hearing the voice of the boss and the possibility that she is still alive and in Costa Rica, he eventually relents and agrees to help once he sees Galvez threaten to burn the tape. But Snake says that he's only agreed to do so because of Paz. With the MSF now stationed at their base out at sea, Snake arrives on the coast of Costa Rica at Playa del Alba. Infiltrating the jungle, he immediately spots CIA mercenaries. Sneaking through the area, careful to keep himself silent and invisible, Snake arrives at a supply depot. He overhears a radio man saying that they broke him, and Snake spots a bloodied man in the room. The radio man speaks of a target 500 and that they acquired the location of this target. The voice over the radio talks about spears having been loaded. Interrogating the radio man, he states that he's directing cargo to Irazu in the mountains. After knocking the man out, Snake spots and hears a very odd VTOL passing overhead, which seems to be emitting a kind of song. Searching the room, he finds a map, and this map reveals the army's bases in the region. Speaking with Miller over the radio, he reveals that he's also found a load of film badges used to measure radiation exposure. Surmising that this is linked to the cargo they call spears, they realize that they're bringing nukes into Costa Rica. This is a direct contravention of the international treaty called the Tlatelolco Treaty, which established the denuclearization of Latin America and the Caribbean. This was put in place in order to prevent a repeat of the Cuban Missile Crisis. With Snake needing to know the lay of the land, Miller reminds him about the Sandinistas and advises that he get in touch with their commander. While Snake sets off to make contact with the commander, one of the MSF soldiers infiltrates the supply depot and uses a Fulton device to extract the radio commander. That soldier is sent to the mother base and is then eventually recruited into the MSF. Meanwhile, Snake speaks with Paz, who is staying at a school until things quieten down a bit. She says that if he needs to know anything about Costa Rica, then he should ask her. Miller then tells Snake they need to confirm what the spears actually are. Miller says the Sandinistas' hideout has come under attack, so Snake needs to head there and secure the commandant. Heading through the jungles of eastern Limon, Snake eventually reaches the hideout and does indeed find that it's come under attack. Dealing with the soldiers there, Snake hears a thud coming from the boathouse. Heading up, he finds the Sandinistas there. They were hiding. Snake speaks with a young woman who is called Amanda. Their commandant, her father, is dead, so she has taken command of the group. Snake tells her that he's a Colombian and that he went there to take pictures of birds. She confirms that the soldiers who attacked the base were indeed CIA mercenaries, and she says that they've got too much hardware for something as simple as pushing the Sandinistas out. She also informs Snake of one of the enemy's bases, an abandoned factory to the north. During their chat, they are interrupted by the VTOL Snake saw earlier on, still playing that strange melody. It's revealed to be an unmanned weapon, and it begins firing upon the Sandinistas. Snake saves Amanda's life, but the VTOL deploys capture drones, and Snake destroys a couple of them but misses the VTOL. One of them grabs Amanda's little brother Chico, and Snake stops her from using a launcher, as the fall will kill Chico. Amanda and her Sandinistas run after the drone. With reinforcements arriving at the boathouse, Snake makes his way to the factory. After finding and freeing any prisoners being held there at the sorting shed, Snake passes through and comes to a large open area. A group of heavily armoured personnel with the letters PS on their gear show up, along with an armoured vehicle known as a LAV Type G, and a battle takes place. Unfortunately for them, Snake eventually defeats them and destroys the vehicle. After this battle, Snake spots another drone. This one has a gun mounted on it. It's heading towards a gunship, and the odd melody continues to play out. The drone eventually spots Amanda, who is nearby, and it deploys a grappling hook, which grabs Amanda in an attempt to abduct her. Amanda cuts herself free, but in the fall, she breaks her leg. Another grappling hook is deployed, and Snake shoots the drone. Amanda falls through some trees, and these help to break her fall a bit, softening the landing. But she's still heavily injured. Thankfully, the trees cover their position from the drone. Amanda states that the abandoned factory that Snake passed through is an old banana factory which was once a KGB front for drug production. This factory, operated by the Sandinistas, served to provide funds for the revolution. Telling her that he suspects that the cargo is actually nukes, Amanda is shocked. She says that the transport route could lead them to Chico and her revolutionaries. Snake agrees to help rescue Chico. He reveals his true identity to her, and he uses the Fulton device to send her to the mother base so she can heal up. With her at mother base, he can ask her any questions he has about American bases or their mercenary units. Snake heads to the mountains to infiltrate the mountain prison facility. Arriving, the facility is essentially a small village that has been taken over by the CIA mercenaries. They installed new front doors to make them more secure, and they are housing prisoners inside these tiny houses. Checking the front doors and looking through the peepholes, Snake eventually finds the one that houses Chico. Entering the house, Chico recognizes Snake from the boathouse. Chico says that the mercenaries take the cargo through the marshes on a barge, then they load the cargo onto a train and transport the cargo by rail, and then the train then stops at a terminal just past a coffee plantation. The train goes into a tunnel and then disappears. He says that none of the Sandinistas ever managed to get close enough to the other side of the tunnel, as it's protected by a spirit, a giant monster that he calls El Basilico, which means King of Snakes. Chico goes on to say that this King of Snakes walks on legs as big as trees, and that he saw this monster at the terminal next to the tunnel. Chico says that if Snake hurries, he can catch the train at the terminal. It's revealed that Chico was conflicted about how the Sandinistas were funding themselves, which, as we've heard, was through drug production and smuggling. At one point, he tried to set the drug plant on fire, such was his disgust at what the Sandinistas were doing. He reveals that he gave into the torture and gave up information on the Sandinistas, and as a result he says he wishes he was dead. Snake gives Chico a reason he should go on living, that he should fight alongside him, and sends him to Mother Base via Fulton Recovery. Amanda thanks Snake for saving her and Chico asks Snake to save any Sandinista prisoners he finds, and offers to answer any questions regarding wildlife that he has. An intel team is then set up at Mother Base in order to support the MSF's efforts. Snake then heads for the terminal to try and intercept the cargo. Snake arrives at the coffee factory and passes through. He eventually makes it to the terminal at El Cadalso. He spots a train car and a bunch of soldiers there. Neutralizing the enemy soldiers, Snake checks the train car, and the cargo has been loaded onto a truck and is driven away, but not before Snake gets a good look at the truck's number plate. He then has to do battle with another heavily armored vehicle, this time a T-72 tank, along with more heavily armored soldiers. Despite the overwhelming odds, Snake excels in battle. After taking some damage, the captain, who is controlling the tank, emerges, and taking him out, Snake is able to capture the tank, and it becomes a useful asset gained by the MSF. Snake needs to go after the trucks carrying the cargo. Since the tank took out the tunnel, Chico tells him about an alternate route through the prison village. Miller also mentions the fact that after scrapped plans to build hydroelectric plants in the region, there's an entrance into the mountain via one of the crater lakes. Miller surmises that they probably built a base inside the mountain, so making his way to the village and blowing up a barricade, Snake crosses over a gorge and is now at a fortress called Fuerte La Ladera. Infiltrating it, he finds the truck he saw leaving earlier on, but the nukes are no longer there, with them having been unloaded. Snake then overhears a conversation.
Just a minute, this isn't what we agreed on.
It's too late. The changes have already been finalized.
You told me it was going to be a deterrent, that we wouldn't have to launch.
I am not arguing with you, Doctor. Our goal is to create the perfect deterrent.
That's why I agreed to help develop it.
However, in order to achieve that perfect deterrent, we must show the world our strength. 3 key principles ensure effective nuclear deterrence. First, you must have nuclear weapons. Second, you must never use them first. And third, and most important, if someone attacks you, you must strike back. Unless we prove beyond a doubt that these 3 principles work in practice, the world will not accept our new deterrent. And the only way to do that is to show them we're capable of actually launching a nuke.
But isn't deterrent supposed to stop nukes from being used?
Exactly. And so the one we launch will be the last one ever.
I won't let you use my creation like that.
Your creation? That thing wasn't even your idea to begin with. You stole it, didn't you?
Stole it? You're one to talk. You got the idea for bipedal locomotion from the communists in the first place.
You listen to me, Doc. Keep quiet. Do as I say. Not another word about stolen ideas. Should we succeed here, you'll be the toast of the scientific community. And your name will go down in history as champion of both progress and national security.